So there I was, minding my own business in my yard, when the whole neighborhood turned into a live drama show right next door. Turns out my cousin Su Shuang got caught buck naked in her husband's little brother's bedroom. Apparently she'd been sneaking off every night with brother-in-law Li Zihuan, but tonight her actual husband Li Zian walked in and busted the whole thing wide open.
Classic.
Shuang did what any dignified woman caught red-handed would do. She grabbed a bedsheet, wrapped herself up like a burrito, and started sobbing like the world was ending. She lunged at her husband, begging him to get justice for her.
He just
stepped aside. She face-planted at his feet instead.
Smooth.
Meanwhile, Li Zihuan, still tangled in the sheets, was busy scheming how to dump all the blame on her. His brother gave him a silent little lip signal like, say nothing, let her take the fall. Teamwork, honestly. The in-laws showed up looking barely surprised, which told me everyone in that house already knew about the affair except poor clueless Shuang. She crawled over to her mother-in-law begging for help, laying it on thick with the waterworks. Big mistake. The mother-in-law slapped her across the face and ordered someone to fetch the village head so they could drown her in the pond as punishment for shaming the family. Yikes. That's when my grandmother, who lives close by and apparently sleeps like a cat, showed up mid-crowd because of course a crowd had gathered outside with torches, watching this like free theater. Grandma stood up for Shuang, saying you can't just decide to drown someone without even asking what actually happened. The nosy onlookers backed her up too, some even muttering that maybe it was Zihuan who snuck into his sister-in-law's bed, not the other way around. That comment hit a nerve. The mother-in-law spun around and started trashing my grandmother and our whole family instead, calling us trashy and accusing our bloodline of raising loose women. I couldn't just stand there and let Grandma get bulldozed, so I marched out with my husband Scumbag right behind me, followed by his mom and sister too. The second the mother-in-law saw us flanking Grandma like bodyguards, she switched targets and started throwing shade at my husband instead, basically warning him to divorce me now before I supposedly cheat on him too, using Shuang as her proof that women from our family can't be trusted. Family drama level. Village bonfire event. Honestly, my husband Scumbag hates drama. If it weren't for protecting my grandma, he wouldn't have even stepped outside. But once the mother-in-law, Mrs. Zhao, started trash-talking me by name, that was the line. Before he could even open his mouth, his own mom, Aunt Sue, beat him to it. Aunt Sue basically told Mrs. Zhao, keep your family mess to your own family. My daughter-in-law has been nothing but perfect since she married in, so don't you dare drag her into your disaster. The crowd loved this. People started piling on, pointing out that Mrs. Zhao was clearly trying to deflect blame onto me instead of dealing with her own son's mess, and comparing me favorably to my cousin Shuang. Apparently, everyone in the village already knew Shuang's mom, my aunt, poor sleeping Lu Hehua at home, totally unaware she was being roasted in absentia, wasn't exactly known for raising well-behaved daughters. Mrs. Zhao cornered, threw out one true point though. If I hadn't already been married off, Shuang's scandal would have ruined my marriage prospects too. That shut some people up. Everyone knows one scandalous daughter can drag down her unmarried sister's reputations too. Still, Mrs. Zhao tried to save face by acting all wounded and accusing Aunt Sue of biting the hand that feeds. That's when my husband finally snapped and told her to shut up and stop insulting his wife, or she'd regret it. Mrs. Zhao is actually terrified of him. The man once killed a tiger with his bare hands, no joke, so she backed off fast. Even his cousins jumped in defending our family's honor. Meanwhile, back in the scandal bedroom, Shuang was still wailing that Zihuan framed her. Zihuan, playing his assigned role perfectly, flipped it back on her, accusing her of sneaking into his room to seduce him, even throwing in, "Maybe my brother isn't satisfying you," as a jab. That almost caused a disaster because Li Zian, the actual husband, panicked, terrified his brother would blab their whole secret arrangement. He shut them both up fast. Then things got worse. Li Zian dragged poor naked Shuang by the hair back toward his room, and her one sheet of modesty fell right off in front of the entire torchlit crowd. My grandma couldn't just watch that happen. She ripped off her own outer coat and ran in to cover the girl up, then stood her ground in front of Li Zian, refusing to let him touch her until things were properly explained. Li Zian, completely out of patience, tried to shove my grandmother aside, but before his hand even reached her, my husband appeared out of nowhere and grabbed his wrist so hard he couldn't move an inch. Cliffhanger City. My husband didn't let go easy though. He warned Li Zian flat out, touch grandma and he'd lose an arm.
Literally.
Li Zian backed down fast, mumbling something about just being upset, would never hit an old lady. Sure, buddy. With the threat handled, my husband came back to stand by me. Meanwhile, Shuang was still clinging to grandma like a life raft, insisting she was innocent and the Li family framed her. But grandma had officially run out of patience. She told her, essentially, I'm just a powerless old woman. Wait for your actual parents to sort this out, and turned to walk away. Big mistake by Shuang. Instead of being grateful, she started whining that grandma always favored me over her, calling me a moneyless burden. Rude, considering I'm doing just fine, thanks. That was the final straw. Grandma just said, fine, guess I do play favorites then, and walked off without looking back. Only then did Shuang realize she'd just torched her only lifeline mid-crisis. Rookie mistake. With grandma gone, Mrs. Zhao stopped arguing with the crowd and went back inside. Zihuan strolled out fully dressed like nothing happened. Shuang, meanwhile, had officially given up on dignity and just huddled in the yard wrapped in grandma's coat. The dad sat under the eaves smoking his pipe in stony silence, and the studious younger brother, mortified by the family scandal, just retreated to his room to pretend none of this was happening. Then Li Zian dropped the bomb on Shuang. We're talking. Now. She, still delusional, thought his softer tone meant he still loved her. Spoiler. He did not. He laid out her options bluntly. He wouldn't divorce her, wouldn't let her get drowned, but she was damaged goods now, and he'd never touch her again. Basically, stay married in name only, forever alone, or leave and risk her life. Here's the thing about Shuang, she never actually loved Li Zian. She loved the idea of being a nobleman's wife. So even though both choices were basically miserable, she picked staying, gritting her teeth, and agreeing to be his wife, forever, already planning to sweet-talk her way back into his good graces later. Priorities. Just as Li Zian stepped out to smooth things over with his parents, guess who showed up screaming bloody murder from outside the yard? Shuang's actual mother, Lu Hehua, ready to throw hands. Buckle up. Round 2 incoming. Turns out my cousin Wang Xiangqian's little rumor-spreading trip really lit a fire. He'd told my uncle and aunt Shuang's parents, a slightly exaggerated version of events, that Shuang got caught with her brother-in-law and Mrs. Zhao wanted to drown her without even asking questions, on top of insulting Aunt Lu Hehua as a terrible mother. True enough to be believable, spicy enough to guarantee a fight. Mission accomplished, honestly. Aunt Lu Hehua showed up ready to throw down, and Mrs. Zhao, never one to back off from a fight, grabbed a hoe like she meant business, same energy as when she went after me a while back. Except this time, when Aunt Lu Hehua lunged at her, Mrs. Zhao swung first. And connected. Hard. Right on the head. Blood everywhere. My uncle went pale, caught his wife as she went limp, and started screaming for someone to get a doctor, except the nearest doctor lives in the next village over, a solid hour round trip. Someone ran for the village head too. This stopped being entertainment real fast. Shuang scrambled over screaming for her mom to wake up. No response. My grandma, absolutely gutted watching this spiral, grabbed my hand and quietly begged me to try my spring water to save her. First time in 2 lifetimes she's ever asked me for anything. Even though Lu Hehua's been nothing but awful to me, I couldn't say no to grandma. So I went over, dodged Shuang swatting at me like an angry cat, and checked Lu Hehua's pulse. She was already gone. No spring water, no miracle. Nothing was bringing her back. I quietly told grandma the truth. She took it hard but accepted it. Everyone has their fate, she said, and asked me to walk her home, which I did, along with my husband. I gave her a diluted cup of spring water, just to help steady her nerves. Meanwhile, Mrs. Zhao was still in denial, yelling at the very dead, body to stop faking it and get up. Her son had to pull her back, quietly panicking because he'd already clocked what I'd seen. No more breathing, no more rising chest. Shuang, meanwhile, turned on the Holy Family with pure venom, screaming that if her mother didn't make it, she'd drag them all down with her. Mrs. Zhao raised the hoe again, ready to go after Shuang next, but her son stopped her just in time, probably the only smart move made by anyone in that yard tonight. The crowd, once entertained, had gone dead silent. Everyone could tell Lu Hehua wasn't getting back up. Inside the house, the studious younger brother Li Ziming couldn't sit still anymore. Dude's been grinding for years to take the imperial exams, and having a murderer for a mother would instantly disqualify him. No criminal record in the family allowed for exam candidates. Big oof for his life plans. Li Zian had the exact same panic since he'd worked just as hard for his own shot at the exams. Ziming stormed out and physically dragged his mom back into the yard, begging her to stop making things worse. She looked at him like he'd betrayed her. "You think I'm the one causing trouble here?" He nearly spilled the whole secret arrangement about his brothers before getting shut down fast by both his mom and older brother. Fuming, he swore that if this scandal cost him his exam eligibility, he'd rather die. Even the dad, who normally says nothing and does nothing except farm all day, finally stood up and told everyone to shut up and wait for the village head. That alone tells you how serious things had gotten. If this guy is talking, the sky is basically falling. Then the village head arrived. First thing he did was check the body. No pulse, obviously dead. He asked if a doctor had come yet. Nope, still an hour away. He confirmed it out loud. She's gone. Cue instant village-wide panic. Small fights, sure, they've had those. An actual death? Never happened before. Naturally, Shuang and her dad Su Taiju started wailing dramatically, with dad vowing to march to the authorities at first light for justice. Here's the thing though, the village head had already gotten the full story on his way over. And unlike everyone else pinning this whole mess on Shuang, he privately suspected the real story, that Shuang had schemed her way into marrying Li Zian in the first place, stealing him from me, if we're being honest, using some very convenient morning walks by the river. If she actually liked her husband that much to scheme for him, why would she then sleep with his little brother? And if she really was seducing the brother on purpose, why scream loud enough to get the whole household to catch her? None of it added up, which, in his eyes, actually made her look more like a victim in tonight's specific incident. But he wasn't about to get involved in that mess. A death. Though, that's his actual job. He turned to the dad, Li Hui, the family's supposed decision-maker, and asked what they planned to do about it. Li Hui, nervous, offered compensation. Su Taiju, understandably furious, snapped back, "Compensation for my wife's life." Li Hui then made things worse by getting defensive, pointing out that Lu Hehua swung first and misses. Zhao just hit back a little too hard. Su Taiju, appalled at how casually this murder was being brushed off, declared he was taking it straight to the county magistrate. The village had just about lost it at Li Hui. The guy never says two words normally, and the one time it actually matters, he opens his mouth and torches any chance of a peaceful settlement. Iconic self-sabotage. My cousin Li Zian was sweating bullets. He thought the village head negotiating a settlement would smooth everything over, but then his own dad went and torched that plan with his mouth. So Zian, thinking fast, switched targets, walked over to Shuang with the softest voice he'd ever used. She barely recognized it as him, and asked to talk privately. She, for once, didn't grovel. She made him ask twice before agreeing to head back to their room. Once alone, Zian tried the diplomatic route. "Yeah, this whole mess is on my mom. But like we agreed, you're staying, I'm staying. I'll study hard and become a scholar next year. Make you the only scholar's wife in the village." Cue Shuang. Mentally replaying her past life memories of Zian actually pulling that off, becoming a top scholar, getting recognized by his birth family as a nobleman's son. The whole glow-up. In her last life, that glow-up happened for me instead of her.
Tempting, right?
But her mom's sudden brutal death cracked something open in her brain. She stopped fooling herself. She'd spent days pretending Zian actually cared about her, but reality slapped her awake tonight. He's genuinely a nobleman's son, sure, but He doesn't love her, not even a little. Would marrying into a noble house even matter without that? Still, leaving him meant, what? Running off with the village head's son like she did in her last life, only to get sold off as a concubine to some gross old man, then resold to a brothel in the capital after he died? Absolutely not. Not again. So she made her move. She looked Zian dead in the eye and said, "If my dad and I take your mother to court for murder, you know exactly what happens to your exam future." Boom. Direct hit. Zian's whole face changed. She'd found his one true weak spot and was clearly planning to squeeze it for everything it was worth, now and probably again once he got his noble title back. He knew exactly what she was doing and still had zero countermove. Priorities being priorities, he swallowed his pride. He offered a private settlement. His mom would pay compensation to avoid a court case that could end his brother's exam chances too. Shuang, playing it cool despite already expecting this, asked, "How much? And how do I know you even speak for the whole family?" Zian assured her his mom would move mountains to protect his little brother's exam eligibility, so compensation would happen. Then he added the real ask. They'd continue, married in name only, just like agreed before. Shuang almost pushed back. This time SHE holds the power, not him, but reconsidered. No husband could stomach watching his wife tangle with another man and still want her in his bed right away. Better to take the win now and work on reconciliation later. She agreed. Then she went to break the news to her dad, who was still sitting there in shock, cradling his dead wife's body, having just gotten official confirmation from the doctor. The village head had already hinted heavily that pressing charges would be a bad look for everyone. Code 4, please don't make this my problem. Su Taiju, torn between grief, revenge, and not wanting to get on the village head's bad side or ruin his daughter's remaining reputation, didn't fight Shuang's suggestion to just bring the body home first. So home they went, carried by volunteers, wailing the whole way, waking up poor little brother Su Qingyang, who joined the crying, followed by Dad, until the whole house was one big midnight funeral chorus. Once the tears dried up a bit, Shuang finally mentioned the compensation offer. Her dad, suddenly sharp and clear-headed despite his grief, didn't hesitate. "If the Li family pays 100 taels of silver, I won't take this to court." Shuang about choked. She'd been mentally negotiating for 50 taels tops, and everyone knows the Li family's basically broke trying to fund little brother's education. 50 taels would be a stretch. 100? Good luck finding that lying around. But Dad looked dead serious, so she kept her mouth shut and let him run with it. Before bed, Shuang told her dad, "The Leaf family will probably come by at dawn to negotiate. Just handle it however you want." She knows her dad well enough. Not the sharpest guy, kinda greedy, and if her mom's death could net him a solid payout, he'd absolutely take the deal. Overnight, her dad cleaned up the body, set up a makeshift memorial tent in the yard, and realized he had zero savings for a coffin. Turns out all the family's silver had already gone to me in an earlier chapter. Long story. So everything was riding on getting paid by the Lee family first. Sure enough, at dawn, the village had showed up with basically the entire Lee family in tow. Even the usually invisible little brother Zimming came along. After some opening comfort words, the village had got to business. The Lee family had come with sincerity to discuss compensation. Now, my uncle Su Taiju had privately agreed to 100 taels the night before. But faced with the actual murderer's family, all his grief and rage boiled back up, and he opened with 200 taels, or I go to the magistrate. Double the number. Shuang about had a heart attack. Where did that number come from? Mrs. Zhao predictably lost it. Why don't you just rob me instead? Her sons practically tackled her to keep her quiet before she torched the negotiation completely. Zimming literally clamped a hand over her mouth. Zihuan tried smoothing things over with charm, calling her, "Just a firecracker temper, please don't take it personally." Su Taiju wasn't budging. 200, not a coin less. The dad, Li Hui, finally spoke up, awkwardly, clearly a rehearsed speech, begging for a lower number since they genuinely couldn't afford it. Su Taiju softened slightly at his humility, but reminded them, "This isn't just paying for a life, it's paying for both your sons' futures. Worth it, right?" It was actually, the whole family's hopes were riding on Zimming's exam success. but the money genuinely wasn't there. The village head, who knows everyone's finances better than anyone, stepped in to mediate, pointing out that even he couldn't scrape together 200 taels, let alone the Li family. Could they negotiate? Su Taiju, having patted his ask specifically expecting to haggle, dropped to 180. The sons clamped down on their mom's mouth again preemptively. More haggling ensued. Eventually, they landed on 100 taels, exactly what Su Taiju wanted in the first place, smart move padding the initial number. The village head drew up a formal written agreement on the spot. Mrs. Zhao accidentally caused Lu Hehua's death, agrees to pay 100 taels compensation. Both families settle the matter completely afterward. Both fathers stamped it with their thumbprints, village head as witness, 3 copies made. 1 for each family, 1 held by the village head until payment clears. Su Taiju gave them 2 days to pay up, no excuses. The Li family left looking utterly defeated, already scrambling for a plan, because 2 days or 20, they simply didn't have that kind of cash lying around. Only option, sell land. The family owns 18 mu of farmland, a solid chunk by village standards, the only reason they're not totally broke despite funding a scholar's education. Dry farmland around here goes for about 10 taels per mu, so 100 taels means selling 10 mu, more than half their land. Both parents were internally bleeding at the thought, but hey, murder has consequences. The village head quietly spread word that Li family land was going up for sale. Meanwhile, my husband and I had spent the whole night comforting Grandma until she finally cried herself to sleep near dawn. Walking home, we heard the news about the land sale. My husband's branch of the family doesn't own farmland. Long story involving the original household split, where his mom gave up her share since her kids were too young to farm at the time. In exchange, Grandpa arranged that the other 2 branches split the 12 mu of dry land between them, but each owes my mother-in-law 1 mu's worth of harvest yearly, and she's exempt from supporting the grandparents. She also got the house we currently live in as part of the deal. My husband has always wanted to buy farmland once he had money from hunting. Country folks live and die by their land, as all the village elders love reminding him constantly. Problem was, nobody around here ever sells land, so his dream just sat on pause. Until now. Li family desperately dumping 10 mu of land? Jackpot. He turned to me, sweetly asking if we should buy some together. Very married couple energy, actually consulting me instead of just deciding solo. Honestly, refreshing. I don't need riches, just a peaceful family. Though secretly, I'm also sitting on a stash of high-yield crop seeds from my special space that need actual farmland to shine. So yes, obviously I said buy it, ideally all 10 mu, if we can swing it. We went home to talk to his mom, Aunt Sue. She'd just finished making breakfast and was about to send little sister Xiao over with food for Grandma. I stopped her. Since Grandma had cried herself to sleep at dawn, I'd already snuck a bit of spring water into her congee before we left, don't worry. Xiao said she'd check on Grandma at lunch instead. Big sister-in-law Yaya, still recovering from childbirth, asked how Grandma was doing. I told her she's just heartbroken, nothing serious. Aunt Sue, sweet as ever, handed me a bun with breakfast and scolded me gently for being too polite with her, like we're not actually family. Be still, my heart. Once everyone finished eating, my husband brought up the land. Aunt Sue was already on the same page. She pulled out the family's entire savings, 33 taels, locked away in a cabinet. At 10 taels per mu, that's enough for 3 mu. Honestly not bad for a farming family, especially considering they'd already spent a good chunk on our wedding, betrothal gifts, feast, furniture, the whole thing. Widowed mother, 3 kids, and still managed to save that much? Respect. Right on cue, Grandpa and Grandma Ho showed up, the actual patriarch and matriarch of the extended family, checked on Yia first, then got to the real topic. Grandma Ho pointed out that when the family split years ago, Aunt Sue's branch got no land because the kids were too young then, but now that my husband's grown, maybe it's time to fix that. Aunt Sue showed them the 33 taels openly, no secrets. Grandpa immediately said 3 mu was too small a buy. If land's actually for sale for once, buy as much as you can. Grandma Ho then pulled out another pouch, 20 taels, their lifetime savings handed straight over, framed generously as a loan. My husband could pay back slowly once his hunting income picked up, so Aunt Sue wouldn't feel weird accepting it. She took it, promising a proper IOU. Meanwhile, I'm doing math in my head. 53 taels so far. Buying all 10 mu needs 100 taels. We're 47 short. I've got 22 taels from Grandma's dowry gift plus the 10 taels betrothal money. 32 more, bringing us to 85. Close but not quite there. Our half-finished manuscript for the bookshop hasn't even been submitted yet, let alone approved and paid. That process takes time we don't have before the Lee land gets snatched up. So I went to my room, pulled out silver from my private stash, long story, don't ask, and came back with enough to bring our total to buying 8 mu outright. Aunt Sue immediately protested. We can't use your dowry money for this. I pointed out the obvious hypocrisy. 5 minutes ago we were one family. Now suddenly my money's separate?
Truth is,
This was my rainy day fund, but land is land, a real asset, and I already know exactly which plot. Eastern edge of the village, right next to a pond. Perfect for irrigation. Miss this chance, and land like that won't come up again for years. Aunt Sue kept refusing until Grandpa Ho settled it once and for all. If I'm the one putting up dowry money, then the land gets registered under my name, still technically my dowry, just. Now it's dirt instead of silver. Fair enough. With that settled, Aunt Sue stopped arguing. My dowry money, my land. Everyone's happy. Looking at our pile of 85 taels on the table, Grandpa Ho wasn't done scheming yet. He sent little Xiao running to fetch my husband's 2 uncles. Tell them Grandpa needs to talk. They showed up fast. Grandpa didn't waste time. We want your sister-in-law to buy all 10 mu of the Lee family's land. We're 15 taels short. Go figure it out. No debate, no hesitation. Both uncles just turned around and left to make it happen. Didn't even give Aunt Sue a chance to protest. Honestly, this floored me. I already knew this family sticks together, but this level of unity? 15 taels is real money for a farming family, and these two just shrugged and went to go find it like it was nothing. Having lived a whole previous life surrounded by backstabbing and scheming, I found myself once again, bizarrely, grateful to Shuang. If she hadn't swapped marriages with me, I'd have never landed in a family this genuinely good. Because of the land deal, my husband and I had to cancel our trip to the bookshop and instead went straight to see the village head, bypassing the Lee house entirely. We found him slumped in his yard, sighing dramatically. Turns out he'd spread word about the land sale hours ago and gotten 0 bites. He'd even sent his own son to other villages hunting for a buyer, because if the Lee family didn't hand over 100 taels within 2 days, Su Taiju would go straight to the magistrate, meaning Mrs. Zhao goes to jail, and his job as village head goes down the drain for letting a death happen on his watch. The second he saw us, his eyes lit up like we were his last hope.
Scumbag.
Are you here to buy that land? Poor guy had apparently asked every single person who walked by all morning. Actually, yes, my husband said, calm as ever. The village head about did a happy dance. Really? How many mu? My husband, instead of naming a number, just said, if possible. I want to buy all of it. Cue actual fist pumping from the village head. Crisis apparently averted. Then came price talk. Lee family wanted 12 taels per mu, way above local rates. 10 taels standard, sometimes 9 for desperate sellers. My husband flatly said, then we're not buying. Classic negotiation move. The village head, panicking at the thought of losing his only buyer, immediately backpedaled. Wait, let me go talk to them first, as if he was going to let this deal slip through his fingers. My husband held firm at 10 taels, market rate, no funny business, no overpaying just because they're desperate. The village head marched over to the Lee house to negotiate. We could hear bits of it from next door. Mrs. Zhao initially resisted taking a lower price, but the village head reminded her that at 12 taels, she wouldn't find a buyer in 2 days flat, guaranteed. Eventually Li Hui, of all people, made the final call, sell all 10 mu at 10 taels each. Their family basically kissed away more than half their farmland. Painful, but self-inflicted. Then came the chaos. When Shuang found out the buyer was specifically my husband, she absolutely lost it, screeching about it out of nowhere. Mrs. Zhao, confused and irritated, slapped her and told her to shut up, since land sales weren't her business. Big mistake. Ever since the compensation deal was signed, Shuang's back to being a spitfire. She clawed Mrs. Zhao's face like an angry cat, threatening to have her own dad report Mrs. Zhao for murder if she got hit again. Eerily identical to how her late mother used to fight, honestly. Li Hui had to step in and yell at everyone to stop tearing the family apart right when things were finally calming down, awkwardly reasserting himself as head of household. A little late for that, buddy, considering the village head was internally thinking, maybe if you'd acted like the head of household earlier, none of this would have happened. Anyway, business is business. The village head walked straight over to us with the agreed terms already locked in. No need to repeat it. I spoke up. Village head, we want the Tenmu next to the pond specifically. I picked the pond side land partly for irrigation, but honestly also because I'm already scheming to buy that pond someday too, keep the land and water source together, easier to manage long term. I said this out loud, no shame, since all the Li family's 18 mu are basically the same soil quality anyway. Didn't matter which section they gave up. Of course, Shuang exploded again. Why do you get to pick which land, on top of getting it cheap at 10 taels? Not because she actually cared about the location, she just hates hearing me speak, period. Allergic to my voice, basically. My husband, unbothered, immediately said, then we're not buying, and started pocketing the 100 taels back up. The village head's face went dark instantly. He'd officially had enough. Li family, are you selling or not? If not, I'm done here, and Mrs. Zhao can enjoy her jail cell. Dead serious. Everyone, the village head included, silently agreed at this point. Shuang is the human equivalent of a wrench thrown into machinery. If she hadn't seduced her brother-in-law, none of this domino chain would have happened. But since she's got leverage over the whole family now, the exam eligibility thing, nobody can actually stop her tantrums. Watching the village head storm off, my in-laws stayed calm. The Li family, on the other hand, panicked instantly. Mrs. Zhao shot Shuang a death glare and went scurrying after him. Village head, don't mind her, she doesn't run this house if the He family wants. The pond side land, they can have it. The village head, unimpressed, just said, great, go get the deed, let's finish this. Mrs. Zhao scrambled home for the paperwork. Deed for silver, silver for deed, clean trade under the village head's supervision. Then came the naming question. Whose name goes on the deed? My husband and mother-in-law said at the exact same time, Yunwan's. I tried to object. We're family, it doesn't need to be under my name specifically, but Aunt Sue wasn't having it. Since we're family, what does it matter whose name it's under? She handed the village head some extra coins to cover the registration and official stamp. No further discussion. The village head gave me a long, meaningful look, then glanced next door at Shuang's mess of a household. Same bloodline, same village, married into families right next to each other. How are the outcomes this different? My in-laws clearly adore me, barely married a few days and already putting land in my name. Meanwhile, next door. Yeah, not gonna finish that thought. With the payment secured, the village head moved fast. By noon he'd handed over the properly stamped, renamed deed. Aunt Sue didn't even keep it herself, just passed it straight to me. I didn't argue with my private storage space. Losing paperwork was never going to be my problem. Grandma woke up around noon and came straight to check on me for updates. When she heard my uncle accepted the 100 taels and dropped the murder charges, she just laughed bitterly. Knew it'd go this way. She knows her son too well. Not much talent, plenty of greed, and money solves everything in his book. Honestly, maybe it's for the best. At least now he and little Qingyang will have something to live on. Despite owing some IOUs now, the whole He family was thrilled. First time they've owned real farmland. Aunt Sue, despite being basically broke again, insisted on hosting a big family dinner to celebrate and thank everyone. My husband ran to town for ingredients, and that evening we threw a proper feast for the extended family, grandma included, since she's my only actual family left and deserves looking after. After the meal, Big Uncle volunteered. Tomorrow morning, all our grown men will bring hoes and help work the new land. Second Uncle agreed just as readily. It's mid-April. Here in the northern part of the country, one growing season a year, we'd already sprouted, so there wasn't a ton to do yet, mostly weeding and fertilizing. Still, 10 mu is a lot for a household with only one adult man, so the extended family pitching in made sense. After dinner wrapped and everyone left, I offered to bring Grandma into my space with us for the night, but she declined, said time moves too strangely in there for her taste. Real reason, she just didn't want to intrude on newlywed alone time. Sweet, honestly. So I walked her home first, then brought my husband into the space. Thanks to spending time in there regularly, his shoulder injury had fully healed. Even the scar basically vanished after a few applications of scar cream mixed with spring water. Actual miracle, by his own reaction. Since he was fully healed, I let him bathe normally, then gave him a full cup of spring water, same as my first time drinking it. His body immediately broke out in that same foul-smelling black oil, and his meridians bulged alarmingly, his whole body locked rigid. Painful stuff I'd never personally experienced, but he gritted his teeth through all 15 minutes of it without calling for me once, too proud to let me see him struggle. Turns out, neither of us realized it. This reaction is insanely rare, like 1 in 10,000 rare. It only happens in people with genuine martial arts potential. The spring water had quietly widened his meridians, meaning once he actually trains seriously, he'll be able to hold way more internal energy than a normal person ever could. After his mystical, water from heaven, treatment, he washed up properly, and I came out of the bathroom in the clean clothes I'd already laid out for him. Back in the space, my husband was practically glowing. Wife, I feel like my hearing and eyesight suddenly got sharper and my whole body feels lighter, grinning like a little kid. His skin even lightened a shade, though he still kept that healthy sun-kissed look, which honestly suits him better than my ghostly pale complexion. Not that I'm complaining about myself, just saying. The man's not trying to outpale me. I already knew from my past life exactly what spring water does, so none of this surprised me. A body tempered by spring water learns martial arts twice as fast for half the effort, I told him. He grabbed my hand, all serious. You said we're family, no need for thanks, but this time I really do need to thank you. You've basically given me a second chance at life. Then he bowed to me.
Properly.
Like a whole formal bow. I panicked a little at how serious he got, so I joked, "Are you trying to make me your teacher or something?" Completely deadpan he goes, "Why not?" Makes sense to me, and actually started bowing again for real. I grabbed his arm fast. I was joking. "If you make me your teacher, we're not the same generation anymore." "Absolutely not," he said instantly, no hesitation. "You're my wife." Everything else negotiable, apparently, generational rank with his own wife, non-negotiable. I couldn't help laughing. "You're such a dork, and I mean that affectionately." He turned red.
Wife.
"Did you just call me cute?" I had to clarify fast before he got the wrong idea. Cute like a little kid, not that kind of cute. He just went silent. Poor guy got his hopes up for nothing. Anyway, we've basically been training martial arts together at the same pace ever since, same techniques, similar progress. Way more efficient with company than solo grinding. We even spar sometimes for fun, though he always goes easy on me, obviously. When we finally emerged from the space after several days in there, time moves weird, remember? We looked and felt refreshed. Right after breakfast, both uncles showed up with their sons. "Scumbag, let's go check the land," Big Uncle called. My husband grabbed a hoe and went, and I tagged along since I had nothing better to do. What we found made everyone's jaw drop. Every single wheat sprout across the entire 10 mu had been yanked out of the ground, dead, wilted, lying in the dirt. Who would do something this rotten? Second uncle practically screamed. The cousins were furious too. To a farming family, crops are sacred, the whole reason generations survived. Even the worst people don't touch someone's crops. That's basically an unwritten rule. Then, way across the field, 2 figures were spotted, bending, standing, walking forward, bending again. Pulling out sprouts one by one. My husband, with his hawk eyes, spotted them instantly. That's Mrs. Zhao and Shuang. Big Uncle stormed over, hoe in hand, yelling that he'd report this destruction straight to the village head. The 2 women, absorbed in finishing their dirty work, hadn't noticed anyone approach. They were literally on the last sprout. Shuang, Hearing the shout, just told her mother-in-law, "Hurry, don't leave a single sprout behind." Mrs. Zhao said nothing, just worked faster. By the time the He family surrounded them, Shuang had just yanked the very last one. "Mrs. Zhao, how could you rip out perfectly good sprouts like this?" Big Uncle demanded. Mrs. Zhao, completely unbothered, puffed her chest out. "So what? I'm pulling my sprouts. None of your business. The land was sold to us. How do you have any right pulling anything up now?" Big Uncle nearly had an aneurysm at her logic. Nobody in this village has ever seen someone this shameless. Mrs. Zhao doubled down. "We sold the land. The sprouts were planted by my family. Those are our sprouts, and I'm taking them. Turns out, after handing over the 100 taels yesterday, Mrs. Zhao had been stewing in resentment all night, and hearing about the He family's celebration feast lit her fuse even further. Shuang, meanwhile, simply cannot handle watching me live a good life. Even if she plans to eventually surpass me, watching me thrive now is unbearable. So she, helpfully, pointed out the loophole to Mrs. Zhao. Land sold, sprouts still technically Li family property. Petty minds united at last, first time these two have agreed on anything. They'd snuck out before dawn thinking they'd finish before anyone noticed. Except Tenmu is a lot of sprouts to hand pull, and they got caught red-handed right as they finished the very last row. Mrs. Zhao's the type who'll argue even when she's wrong, and honestly she didn't think she was fully wrong here, just a little rotten, in her own mind. Getting caught by a bunch of angry uncles? Not exactly terrifying, since none of them would actually hit a woman. Big Uncle rallied everyone. "We saw you two strip this field bare with our own eyes. Come with us, the village head can sort this out." Surrounded by that many grown men, even Mrs. Zhao knew better than to push her luck out in an empty field with no witnesses to stop them if things got physical. So the whole group marched to the village head's house. The poor guy had just caught his breath after settling the murder case, only to see a mob show up dragging Mrs. Zhao and Shuang again. "Mrs. Zhao, what now?" he asked, clearly exhausted. Before she could answer, I jumped in first. "Village head, Mrs. Zhao," and Shuang pulled out every single sprout in our field. His jaw dropped. In his entire time as village head, no feud, however brutal, had ever escalated to destroying someone's actual crops. If this was true, Mrs. Zhao had officially hit a new low even for her. Caught red-handed, Mrs. Zhao still tried her weak defense. "The village head, my husband planted those sprouts. I can pull them if I want. None of the He family's business." The village head about lost his mind. "The land is sold. How is it not their business?" Shuang jumped in with her own version of the same nonsense. "We only sold the dirt, not the crop. Those sprouts are still Li family property." The village head genuinely wanted to crack both their skulls open just to check what was rattling around in there.
Word
Spreads fast in a small village, and by now half the villagers had trailed along to watch, muttering their own commentary. General consensus being that literally every land sale anyone's ever seen includes the standing crop unless it's dead winter, and that these two women were an absolute disgrace, and honestly explained a lot about why the Li families always broke. The village head, pointing right in Mrs. Zhao's face, reminded her that crops always transfer with the land sale. Always have. Did she seriously not know this basic village custom after a lifetime living here? Truth is, she genuinely didn't. She'd never handled a land transaction before, and given how universally disliked she is, no other village wife ever bothered explaining these things to her. Hearing the crowd's judgment and the village head's confirmation, she looked genuinely stunned for a second. But stunned or not, she's never one to back down. "My husband bought those seeds, planted them himself. The He family paid for dirt, not crop. Those sprouts are ours." At this point the village had realized arguing with her was medically dangerous for his blood pressure. He sent little cousin Xiang Qian running to fetch the actual Li men. Li Hui and his sons arrived, already briefed on the situation en route, Li Hui muttering curses the whole walk over. Once there, though, he switched to damage control mode fast. "Village head, what's done is done. How do we fix this?" "Fix it? Those sprouts are dead. Can't replant them. You compensate, simple as that." Li Hui, resigned, asked how much. The village head deferred to my husband directly. My husband, calm as always. By fall harvest, 10 mu of wheat would have sold for at least 10 taels. We're neighbors, I'm not trying to squeeze anyone, 10 taels is fair. Mrs. Zhao about combusted. 10 taels? Are you out of your mind with poverty, Scumbag? I'll pay for the seeds, maybe 1 tael, tops. My husband ignored her completely and kept talking to the village head. If those sprouts hadn't been pulled, they'd have grown to harvest. It's already mid-April. Too late to replant now. That field's basically going to sit empty a whole year. 10 taels and losses isn't unreasonable, is it? Big Uncle backed him up. Letting land sit fallow a year is basically like breaking new ground all over again. Next year. We didn't even ask for a discount on the purchase price. We've already been more than generous. Even the village had agreed this made sense. He glared at Li Hui. Well, Li Hui just crouched on the ground, head in hands, playing the martyr, refusing to speak. The village head, fed up with his usual silent brooding routine, actually kicked him. I'm talking to you. Big Uncle upped the pressure. If they won't compensate fairly, we'll just take this to the county magistrate instead. That word, magistrate, snapped Li Hui upright instantly. We'll pay. We'll pay. My husband held out a hand. 10 taels. Settled, Mrs. Zhao panicked for real now. Husband, we don't have 10 taels. They didn't even have one, honestly. Li Hui, at the absolute end of his rope, slapped her across the face. Shut up. You're the reason this whole family is bleeding money dry, Mrs. Zhao froze. In all their years married, Li Hui had never so much as raised his voice at her, let alone his hand. Once it registered, she came out swinging, clawing at him like a wild animal, screaming she'd fight him to the death. Xian and Zihuan had to physically pull her off. Li Hui's face left scratched and bloody. Shuang, meanwhile, stayed dead silent, terrified of accidentally redirecting anyone's rage onto herself. The village head, furious, shouted them all down. Enough. Mrs. Zhao, pay up or I'm done protecting you. He turned to my husband. Scumbag, take my ox cart. Go file with the magistrate yourself. That finally scared Xian into begging for mercy. Village head, please don't take my mother seriously. My father's the head of household. Whatever he says goes. Li Hui, cornered, offered the only thing they'd left. Village head, we can't pay in silver. Would a moo of land work instead? The village head looked to my husband, who nodded. Deal closed. So that's how Mrs. Zhao and Shuang's little sprout massacre ended, with the Li family handing over yet another moo of land, bringing our total up to 11 mu. And this particular moo? No more worrying about anyone sneaking in to sabotage it. After this fiasco, I doubt even Mrs. Zhao has the nerve left to try something like that again. With the drama settled for now, we all headed home. But the second we stepped into our own yard, we heard absolute chaos coming from next door. Except this time, it wasn't Shuang wailing. It was Mrs. Zhao herself. Turns out Li Hui went home and just started beating her, full punches and kicks. None of the sons stepped in to stop him. Honestly, even they think she had this coming. Her screaming started off dramatic, turned to begging, then eventually just faded into nothing. Nobody on our side felt one bit sorry for her. Self-inflicted, start to finish. While the Li house descended into domestic warfare, our house was the picture of peace. We all sat together figuring out what to do with our newly stripped 10 mu of land. Funny thing is, out of everyone in the room, I'm probably the most knowledgeable about farming. Long story involving my past life, where the man who ruined everything for me eventually became the country's top agriculture minister. Except here's the twist. It was actually me behind all his genius agricultural breakthroughs back then. He took credit for introducing corn, sweet potatoes, and peanuts to the country, crops that don't even exist here yet in this life. Corn alone would have solved food shortages practically overnight. Sweet potatoes grow in almost any soil and taste great on top of it. And peanuts? Those can be pressed into oil, a genuine game changer, since right now most people cook with animal fat, and the rare vegetable oil available is so expensive only nobility can afford it. Peanut oil has like a 40 to 50% extraction rate. Last lifetime, I figured out how to make it, and he took the invention straight to the emperor for glory. This time, no leverage, no blackmail, no stolen credit. Whatever I choose to do with this knowledge, profit for us, or benefit for the whole village, that's entirely my call now. Obviously, I'd still loop my husband in on decisions, since unlike a certain someone from my past, he actually has integrity. While I was mentally mapping out what to plant, my mother-in-law grandma he showed up with half a sack of soybeans, sighing dramatically and cursing out Mrs. Zhao and Shuang before getting to the point. Too late in the season for wheat now. Plant these soybeans instead, better than letting the land sit empty. Aunt Sue, thrilled at this timely gift, suggested we just plant soybeans across the whole field. My husband, instead of answering right away, looked at me first, which worked out perfectly since I wanted his input anyway before speaking up. I said soybeans sounded great, but also mentioned, casually covering my tracks, that I'd stumbled on a strange plant while foraging last year, similar to soybeans but with the fruit growing underground instead. Grandma and I had tried cooking with it and loved it, so we just nicknamed it Peanut. Happened to have some saved as seed, figured we could experiment with a small patch. My husband, already aware my private stash has crops nobody's ever seen before, played along and helped me cover further. Didn't you also have something stored with the peanuts, some other root thing you mentioned as seed material? Perfect setup. I ran with it. Oh right, sweet potatoes. Bought them off a foreign trader in town when I went to deliver embroidery work. He said you can steam them or boil them into porridge. Grandma and I tried it and, he wasn't lying, sweet, delicious. Had a little left and saved it as seed instead of eating it. Grandma and Aunt Sue exchanged a look and just shrugged. Soybeans are cheap anyway, plant a small amount, do whatever you want with the rest. Aunt Sue, having zero farming expertise herself, was happy to just defer to her son on this. With everyone's blessing, my husband and I retreated to our room and slipped into my space to pick seeds. First time he's actually properly browsed the storage area. Though unlike his usual curious rummaging through my library, this time he stuck close to me, seriously studying the planting techniques for peanuts and sweet potatoes, committing it all to memory. I decided to use the space's own soybean seeds too, since even identical crop varieties yield noticeably better when sourced from in there. As for Grandma's donated soybeans, I had different plans for those. We picked our seeds and left. Peanuts and soybeans both need pre-soaking before planting, so today wasn't going to happen anyway. To avoid raising suspicion, we try not to linger too long in the space during daylight hours. With some free time on his hands, my husband mentioned wanting to head up the mountain to scout around. I really didn't want that. In my past life, this is roughly the time frame when he got seriously hurt hunting up there, though I can't pin down the exact day. Better safe than sorry, so I needed to keep him grounded without making it obvious why. So, I pivoted to Grandma's soybeans as my excuse. MySpace's library has detailed instructions for turning soybeans into bean sprouts, tofu, oil, and all sorts of other products. Last lifetime, I'd already successfully made sprouts and tofu this way. Even pressed soybean oil, until Li Zian found out and opened a whole bean product shop in the capital off my recipes, selling everything at outrageous markups and raking in a fortune. In my past life, my ex priced these bean products insanely high, targeting only rich officials and nobles. Nobody understood the actual production cost better than me. Pennies, basically. I'd begged him repeatedly to lower prices, so regular folks could afford it too. He just called me naive and short-sighted.
Classic.
This time around, no garbage man breathing down my neck, no reason to hold back. So I pulled the tofu-making guide for my space. Husband, look, soybeans can become all sorts of food. Tofu specifically needs a lot of grinding muscle for the soy milk step, so I'll need you home to help. He read through the instructions, agreed instantly, and went to borrow the stone mill from the old family compound. While he fetched it, I soaked the beans in the space. Time moves slower in there, so by the time he got back with the mill, the beans were perfectly ready. Aunt Sue had no clue what we were cooking up, pun intended, but figured it was some new dish, so she pitched in to help, and little sister Xiao joined too, always restless if she's not doing something. The whole family ended up in the yard, making tofu together. 10 pounds of soaked soybeans turned into 30 pounds of finished tofu. Aunt Sue and Xiao couldn't stop gushing over how pretty and soft it looked. Just looking at this makes me happy, but it tastes amazing. Aunt Sue beamed. Xiao grabbed my arm, practically vibrating with excitement, demanding I list every possible way to cook it. I played coy and just said, "Let me cook a few dishes and you'll see." My husband didn't even need asking, just went straight to tending the fire for me. I whipped up 3 simple dishes: braised tofu, stir-fried plain tofu, and cold tofu salad. Unanimous hit across the whole family. Even big sister-in-law Yaya, still recovering from childbirth, ate a serious portion. 30 pounds of tofu is a lot for our small household though. Even after 3 dishes, we barely made a dent. I suggested, respectfully asking Aunt Sue first, since it's her house, sending some over to the extended family and to Grandma. She loved the idea, so my husband hauled a full basin over to the old compound, and Xiao personally delivered a big plate to Grandma. Still had leftovers. Worried about spoilage, Aunt Sue proposed something clever. Why don't we set up a little stall out front and sell some to villagers instead of letting it go to waste? Honestly, exactly what I was hoping she'd suggest. I wanted to test whether tofu could actually work as a business among regular villagers. So we set up shop right outside our door. Problem: our house sits near Oxhead Mountain on the western edge, so foot traffic is mostly people rushing to chop wood or forage, not exactly a bustling market corner. First 15 minutes, total silence. Nobody even glanced our way. Aunt Sue, refusing to give up, worked up the nerve to actually shout out, "Tofu. Delicious tofu." Genuinely rare for her, since she barely leaves the house normally. That caught the attention of Andy Wong and 2 other village women returning from foraging, curious why the usually quiet Aunt Sue was suddenly hawking wares. They wandered over, and Aunt Sue happily pointed at the tofu. "Annie Wong, look what my daughter-in-law made. Tastes amazing in any dish. Want to try some?" I handed out samples of the cold tofu salad. All 3 women tried it on the spot. That's really good, soft, smooth," Annie Wong said, clearly impressed. "How much per pound?" Aunt Sue froze. She'd been so focused on getting rid of the surplus, she never actually settled on a price. She looked at me for backup. I smiled and answered, "Annie Wong, this is called tofu great stir-fried, in soup or cold like this. 5 coins a pound." The other women gasped, sounded pricey to them. But I'd actually thought this through carefully. Tofu's cheap to make, sure, but the labor's intense and it's fresh, perishable food. 5 coins is genuinely affordable for villagers and way cheaper than the outrageous 2 tael per pound price my ex charged nobles in the capital last lifetime. I reassured the skeptical one. "Andy Zhao, it takes real effort to make, and look how much you get per pound, not overpriced at all," gesturing at the actual portion size. Auntie Wong, despite initial hesitation, had tasted it and wasn't backing down. She dug out 10 coins on the spot. "Give me 2 pounds, making a real dish for my family tonight. Tired of eating foraged greens every day, apparently." Aunt Sue happily weighed it out, adding her personal recommendation, "Braise it. Braised is the best way, trust me." Seeing Auntie Wong commit, the other 2 women caved too, each buying a pound. First sales of the day, 4 pounds gone. Aunt Sue was grinning ear to ear. "Yunwan, I honestly didn't think we'd actually sell any. It's delicious, Mom. Trust me, they'll be back for more," I told her, completely confident. Word spread fast. Annie Wong and her friends told literally everyone they ran into that the He family was selling 5-coin tofu, and it was amazing. Villagers with a little extra coin started trickling in, buying 1 or 2 pounds each. Before long, the remaining 13 pounds sold clean out. Aunt Sue had never run a business before, and now she was clutching her 65 earned coins like they were gold bars. "Yunwan, after costs, how much did we actually profit from all this tofu?" I did quick mental math, not counting what we ate ourselves or gave away. "Mom, the cost of what we sold today was about 5 coins total. Everything else is pure profit." She slapped a hand over her mouth to keep from shrieking out loud in the street. "You're telling me we made 60 coins net profit off like a dozen pounds of tofu?" She practically hugged herself. "This is insane. I had no idea tofu could be this profitable." She immediately marched toward the stone mill. "I've learned how to make it now. Let's make more and keep selling." Honestly, at this rate, tofu was outpacing her book copying side income by a mile. I gently stopped her. Mom, I only soaked 10 pounds of beans. There's nothing left to make right now. And it's getting late. Tofu made today won't be fresh by tomorrow. If you want to really run this as a business, let's wait for my husband to get home and figure out a proper plan together. Aunt Sue isn't usually impulsive. She was just riding the high of unexpected success. Okay, we'll do it your way. No rush. When my husband got home, she immediately told him about the day's tofu sales. He asked if she planned to keep selling like this going forward. Why not? Right outside our own door, no stall fees, easily 20 pounds a day. That's real money for basically zero extra effort, she reasoned. Since it's my recipe, he deferred straight to me. What do you think, wife? If Mom enjoys it, let's start there, I said. Privately, I already suspected tofu would eventually outgrow a little stall out front. But I hadn't worked out the bigger plan yet, so letting Aunt Sue run the small version now doubled as free advertising while I figured out the rest. Seeing both of us on board, Aunt Sue beamed. You two go handle whatever you need to. Tofu making is my job now. She figured making 20 to 30 pounds a day wasn't exactly backbreaking work. While we were happily strategizing our tiny tofu empire, next door, a pair of venomous eyes glared over the shared wall. Shuang had overheard Aunt Sue's tofu shouting earlier. And she knew exactly what tofu was, because in her past life, living at the noble household, I, as her, used to have the kitchen staff cook tofu dishes regularly. She'd also heard servants gossip about how the lord of the house invented the tofu recipe and sold it in the capital for a jaw-dropping 2 taels per pound, tofu worth more than meat itself. In her mind, that recipe belonged to Li Zian, which meant, obviously, the He family must have stolen it from him. The logic clicked perfectly in her head. She needed to warn him immediately and get the recipe back. Meanwhile, Zian was lying in bed, exhausted from all the family drama, definitely not in the mood for company. Shuang burst in so aggressively the door slammed against the wall, startling him upright. Seeing it was her, his face darkened instantly. He wanted to yell at her, but remembered she's got leverage over his whole future now, so he swallowed it. Still, his tone wasn't friendly. What's got you so worked up? She didn't bother easing into it. Husband, the He family stole your recipe. He blinked, totally lost. What recipe? The tofu recipe. Tofu. Now he was even more confused. She nodded frantically.
Yes.
Tofu. He was losing patience fast, bracing for whatever nonsense she was about to spring on him. I don't even know what tofu is. What recipe are you talking about? She got more frantic, trying to explain soft white food made from soybeans, delicious and worth more than meat. She described everything she remembered, confused why he was playing dumb. If tofu kept selling for 5 coins a pound under Aunt Sue, by the time Zian remembered his own recipe and tried to relaunch it properly, the 2-tael premium pricing would be dead in the water. Worse, if he started making it himself now and accused the He family of theft, they could be set for life even without ever going back to claim his noble birthright. Zian looked at her like she'd lost her mind. Shuang, I'll say this one final time. I have never heard of tofu, and I have no recipe. His patience was basically gone. He just wanted her out of his room. She stood there, genuinely stunned. He didn't sound like he was lying. In her past life, he'd been the one who invented tofu. Why was he denying it now? Had he somehow already figured out his real noble identity and was planning to invent tofu later once he got to the capital, on his own terms? If the He family hadn't started this business already, she wouldn't be panicking. But watching what she saw as his future fortune get scooped up by someone else lit a fire under her. Husband, tofu sells for 2 taels a pound. The He family's already making it. Are you just going to let them steal your fortune right out from under you? Zian, completely baffled and nearly at his breaking point, was about to snap when she grabbed him and dragged him toward the door. Come look over the wall. You'll understand everything once you see it. Privately, she now wondered if maybe he just hadn't invented tofu yet in this timeline, and hearing her describe it out loud jogged something. Curious despite himself, he let her pull him along. Being tall, he could easily see over the shared wall into the He family yard without effort. He never normally spy on neighbors, considers himself too much of a scholar gentleman for that kind of thing, but her insistence had him genuinely curious now. So the two of them leaned over the wall together, peering into the yard. There, sitting in a wooden basin, were two soft white blocks of something. Zian was certain, genuinely certain, he was seeing this tofu thing for the very first time in his life. Zian turned to Shuang. "This is the tofu you were talking about." She nodded frantically, practically drooling.
Yes.
"That's it. Go demand answers from the He family. They stole your recipe." Worried her loud mouth might carry over the wall, he dragged her back inside first. Shuang, have you completely lost your mind over money?" She looked genuinely confused.
"I've never seen that thing in my life."
"Don't go around telling people it's my recipe. You'll make us both look like fools." Truth is, he was tempted too, but he knows exactly what kind of man Scumbag is, and provoking him could mean a beating, easy. He wasn't stupid enough to actually try it. Shuang, stunned. "You're saying you genuinely don't know what that is?" Impossible in her mind. In her past life, he invented that recipe. But she couldn't exactly explain. "I remember this from my past life," without sounding insane. So she pivoted mentally. Maybe it wasn't him who invented it last time. Maybe it was actually me, Su Yunwan, who figured it out, and he just took credit publicly. Could I have been reincarnated too? She quickly ruled that theory out though. If I'd actually lived a past life, no way would I have agreed to swap marriages knowing my husband would end up crippled. So the only logic that made sense to her, I must have stolen some ancestral Su family recipe. Very convenient theory, very wrong. Husband, actually, that tofu recipe is a Su family heirloom. Su Yunwan definitely stole it from us. She figured showing up alone to confront me would go badly, but with Zian backing her, better odds. Zian was ready to crack her skull open just to see what was rattling around inside. How could someone be this dense? Ignoring his obvious disgust, she pressed on. "Come with me to the He house. Demand the recipe back from that worthless girl. We could sell tofu in the city ourselves and make a fortune." That was the last straw. He slapped her. "Wake up already." She whined, offended he'd hit her. He really didn't want to deal with this brainless woman anymore, but felt obligated to set her straight before she went, and humiliated him publicly again. Shuang, do you think everyone else is stupid and you're the only genius? First you claimed the recipe was mine, hoping I'd go demand it back. That didn't work, so now suddenly it's an ancestral Su family secret? If your family actually had a tofu recipe worth anything, you wouldn't have married me with nothing but a bedroll as your dowry. Bringing up her pathetic dowry still made his blood boil. He'd genuinely never seen a family stingier than hers. Shuang had nothing left to argue. Still, she pushed once more. "Whoever's recipe it is, tofu makes real money. If we sold it too, we could buy back that 11 mu of land in no time." She grabbed his arm, practically begging. "Trust me, we have to get that recipe somehow." He shook her off. "A gentleman earns his wealth through honest means. Don't bring this nonsense to me again." Truth was, he wanted that recipe badly too, but with everything currently on fire in his life, he couldn't afford one more disaster. One wrong move, and his entire future was toast. Shuang realized he genuinely wasn't going to help her. Going alone stood zero chance of success. She shelved the idea for now, figuring she'd find another angle later. He waved her off, irritated. "Just go do whatever and quit scheming nonsense." She pouted and stormed out. Meanwhile, back at our place, Annie Wang showed up again, this time with the village head's wife, Mrs. Fong, in tow. Spotting me in the yard, Annie Wang asked eagerly if we had more tofu. Mrs. Fong chimed in too, having heard rave reviews and wanting to try some herself. I apologized, sold out already, told them to come back early tomorrow since Mom planned to make more. Honestly, I hadn't expected tofu at 5 coins a pound to be this popular in a farming village. Turns out my pricing instinct was right on the money. Both women looked disappointed but accepted it, promising to come back earlier next time. Overhearing all this through the wall, Shuang silently cursed me for being clueless, sitting on a gold mine and too dumb to cash in her words. Meanwhile, I randomly sneezed in my own yard, no idea someone next door was bad-mouthing me in her head. Once the family was asleep, my husband and I slipped back into the space to keep training martial arts, same as usual. The next morning, bright and early, Aunt Sue was already up. She'd soaked 20 pounds of soybeans overnight, wanting to test how much demand there really was. Worst case, we'd just eat the extra ourselves. She'd barely started turning the grinding stone when the whole extended He family showed up, hose in hand, ready for farm work as promised. "What are you up to, third daughter-in-law?" Grandpa he asked. "Making tofu, Dad," Aunt Sue answered, welcoming everyone into the yard. Cousin He Xiangjin's eyes lit up at the word tofu. "Third aunt, your tofu was so good. Think you could teach me how to make it?" Grandpa smacked him upside the head before Aunt Sue could even respond. "What are you thinking, boy? Didn't you hear the whole village came running yesterday to buy her tofu? That's her family's livelihood now, and you're already trying to mooch the recipe." Xiangjin, properly chastened, rubbed the back of his head sheepishly.
Ha.
"Didn't think of it that way, honestly." Then, to avoid any further suspicion of scheming, he pointedly looked away from where Aunt Sue was working, visibly embarrassed at his own overreach into what was clearly his aunt's new income stream. Aunt Sue, being sensible, didn't bother arguing with straightforward cousin Xiangjin about the recipe. She knew it wasn't hers to give away, since it belonged to me and my husband. She just changed the subject. "Dad, big brothers, I'm making extra tofu today. I'll have Scumbag bring some to the old house later." Grandpa waved that off. "Don't bother. Keep it and sell it instead. We'd both come out of the space by then," and Grandpa immediately put my husband to work. "Scumbag, grab those seeds and let's get your new land planted." With 7 or 8 family members showing up across 3 generations, 10 mu of planting got done in a single day. Good thing too, since with that much help pitching in, my husband couldn't exactly slack off. While he headed to the fields with the pre-soaked seeds, I stayed back helping Aunt Sue with tofu. Since we started early, it was ready in no time. Set enough aside for the family, sent the rest out front for sale, and I went to cook breakfast, making extra to send out to everyone working the fields too. People started showing up at the stall, and honestly, you could smell our kitchen from down the road. Mrs. Fong, the village head's wife, hadn't tried tofu yet, just heard rave reviews, but the smell got her curious. "Aunt Sue, is that smell from your kitchen?" "Tofu?" Aunt Sue confirmed it, and right on cue, I walked out with a big pot of braised tofu. The whole line watching practically drooled. Knowing the village head's family could easily afford more, I brought Mrs. Fong a small taste bowl myself. "Annie Zhang, try this braised tofu." Her stomach growled audibly the second she smelled it. 1 bowl in, she was sold, planned to buy 2 pounds, walked away with 5 instead. Seeing her buy that much, everyone else lined up too. That single wave alone cleared over 30 pounds. Word spread even further after that, and by mid-morning, every last bit of tofu was gone. Aunt Sue could barely believe it. She hadn't imagined it would sell out this fast. Clearly tomorrow she'd need to make even more. Next door, Shuang watched fistfuls of coins pile into Aunt Sue's cash box and clenched her fists so hard her knuckles went white. Why does the He family get to profit off tofu, while the Li family's dirt poor and down half their farmland? And why does that worthless girl Su Yunwan get treated so well by everyone in that house, when she should have been the unwanted one? In Shuang's mind, being reincarnated was supposed to mean she gets to live the good life this time. Sure, Xian's noble reveal is coming eventually, but right now, her life is miserable. If Su Yunwan gets to eat fancy tofu, so does she, damn it. She marched straight into Mrs. Zhao's room. "Mom, give me 10 coins. Bold move. Hand out and everything. A confidence she never would have had before, except now she's holding the murder leverage over Mrs. Zhao's head, so why not use it?" Mrs. Zhao, bedridden and recovering from her husband's beating, could barely speak without her whole body aching, but even in pain, Shuang's audacity was too much. "Have you lost your mind? Are you starving? How dare you demand money from me?" Shuang, not in the mood to argue, just said she wanted to buy tofu. "Not just for myself, for the whole family too." Mrs. Zhao, who values money more than her own life, obviously refused. "I have no money. Go ask your father-in-law if you want tofu that badly." Just thinking about all that silver ending up in Su Tieji's pocket made her want to weep all over again. Not bothering to argue further, Shuang just started rifling through Mrs. Zhao's bedside cabinet. She'd scoped it out beforehand, knew exactly where the coins were kept. "What are you doing?" Mrs. Zhao screeched, panicking.
Xian, Zihuan.
"Get in here. This shameless girl is robbing me." Problem was, Li Hui was out in the fields and Ziming was at his studies. Only the two brothers were home, and they were both still asleep. By the time they groggily stumbled in, Shuang had already made off with over 20 coins from the cabinet. She marched straight next door and bought 2 pounds of tofu. By the time she got back, Mrs. Zhao was still shrieking bloody murder. Zihuan, beat some sense into that girl. She's taken every last coin we had left." The brothers cornered her at the front gate. "You dared steal from my mother?" Zian demanded, face going pale with anger. Zihuan, even more dramatic, slapped her outright. "You'll pay for stealing from my mother. I'll kill you." The slap actually hurt a real sting. Shuang glared right back. "You hit me? Want me to go report your mother for murder to the authorities?" That threat instantly deflated both brothers. Zian tried smoothing things over. "Zihuan, that's your sister-in-law. You can't just hit her." "Apologize." Zihuan, grinding his teeth, forced out a half-hearted, "Sorry, sister-in-law. Humph. I'll let it go this once. But hit me again, and I won't be so forgiving." Shuang still needed to play nice with Zian long-term, given her whole, future noble household fantasy, so she didn't want to escalate too far. She brushed past both brothers and marched her tofu straight into the kitchen. The commotion was loud enough that everyone buying tofu at our place heard it clearly, and within the hour, the whole village knew. Shuang stole money from her mother-in-law just to buy tofu out of pure jealousy. When Li Hui got back from the fields, his face was thunderous. Things had just started calming down after the murder scandal, and now this, his daughter-in-law robbing his own wife over tofu, of all things. If this kept up, he'd never be able to show his face in the village again. He stormed into his room and unloaded on Mrs. Zhao, blaming her for being careless enough to let money get stolen right under her nose. Mrs. Zhao felt hard done by too. After all, if she hadn't been bedridden from her husband's beatdown, obviously she'd have stopped that little thief herself. Fair point, honestly. While the Li household spiraled into another cloud of gloom over 2 pounds of tofu, Aunt Sue practically glowed with joy at our place. "Yunwan, help me count today's earnings." After setting aside enough for the family, she'd sold 45 pounds and netted over 200 coins profit. I helped string the coins together, then gently suggested, "Mom, let's keep the batch size the same going forward. No need to make more." She'd been ready to double production tomorrow, so my suggestion caught her off guard. "Why not?" I explained. "Grinding 20 pounds a day is enough work without wearing you out. Plus, today's crowd was mostly curiosity buyers. People won't necessarily buy fresh tofu every single day no matter how good it tastes. Better to keep a steady, sustainable amount and sell out consistently." She agreed it made sense. Before sunset, the whole extended family finished planting all 10 mu of our land together. Aunt Sue set aside plenty of tofu and invited everyone to stay for dinner. Xiao ran to fetch Grandma He and the other women, plus my own grandma too. Over dinner, Grandma He kept raving. Not just delicious, perfect texture for old folks' teeth too. My grandma agreed enthusiastically, saying she hadn't eaten anything this good in ages. Meanwhile, the uncles and cousins just quietly shoveled food, clearly noting privately that Aunt Sue's tofu beat whatever they'd tried making at home. Everyone left the table stuffed and satisfied. Next day, Aunt Sue kept the routine going with Xiao's help, while my husband and I finally got a free moment to take the finished first half of our White Snake manuscript to Sunrise Bookshop. Passing through the market, neither of us noticed 2 pairs of eyes tracking us closely. Turns out these were undercover agents sent by a prince named Jun Haoran, searching for 2 people who'd once saved his life, and apparently we matched the description closely enough to catch their attention. One agent stayed to tail us, the other rushed back to report to the prince, who was recovering from injuries at an inn, guarded discreetly by hidden protectors. Hearing the news, the prince's eyes lit up, told them to keep tracking, just note our address for now. Once he healed up, he planned to pay us a personal visit. At the bookshop, oddly, the usual manager wasn't around. just a shop hand who assumed my husband was there dropping off finished manuscripts and mentioned the manager was busy. Payment would have to wait. My husband clarified we weren't there to drop off pages this time, and since the manager wasn't around to actually handle a new manuscript, we turned to leave. Right at the door, we ran straight into the manager himself, frantically dragging an elderly doctor along. He barely paused to tell my husband payment would be delayed, then rushed the doctor toward the back courtyard. We exchanged a look, assuming someone in the shop had fallen ill. My husband shrugged it off as none of our business, but I grabbed his arm. I'd overheard someone say, "Young master," in that exchange, and my gut told me that meant the shop owner's son, the actual heir of the whole business. "So what?" my husband asked, confused why I cared. I gestured at the manuscript tucked in his coat. "Do you really think the manager alone decides whether we get to sell this? It always has to go up to the actual owner for approval anyway." He caught on. "You want to save this young master? He knows my spring water works miracles. Short of someone's actual time being up, it can heal almost anything. But risking exposure of my secret just to smooth out a manuscript deal?" He wasn't fully sold on the idea. Truth is, in my past life, I'd done a lot of business with this exact person, Fu Hongxin. First time I ever met him, I noticed he walked with a limp. Later I learned it was a congenital. He'd been ambushed by bandits near our hometown and took a serious injury to his right leg. That detail is exactly why I didn't want to leave just yet. If the manager was frantically fetching a doctor for the young master, maybe this was Fu Hongxin and maybe it was that same leg injury happening right now. If so, given our past life connection, I genuinely wanted to help him. The Fu family holds imperial merchant status, serious clout, respected even among officials. But privately, people still mockingly called him Limping Fu behind his back, which he took hard enough to spiral into a real depression for a while. That leg mattered enormously to his pride. Right now, my husband and I have zero money, zero status. But if I could earn Fu Hongxin's genuine gratitude now, that connection could prove enormously useful down the line if we ever needed serious help. I told my husband, "Let's wait a bit. If I can help this young master, we'd get direct access to the shop owner ourselves, no need to go through the manager at all to sell our manuscript." Honestly, my reasoning sounded a little thin even to me, but my husband's gotten to know me well enough these past few days to trust that when I want to help someone, there's usually a good reason behind it, even if I don't spell it all out. "All right, we'll wait," he said simply. We settled back into the shop's guest chairs. About 15 minutes later, the manager came out looking utterly defeated, walking the old doctor to the door, still begging. "Doctor, is there really nothing more you can do? Money's no object for my young master. The Fu family will pay whatever it takes to heal him properly." The old doctor just shook his head, defeated. "His ankle tendon is completely severed. Even the imperial physicians in the capital probably couldn't fix this." Not interested in arguing, he brushed past the manager's protests and rushed out. The manager shuffled back into the shop looking hollowed out, not even registering that we were still sitting there. My husband spoke up first. "Manager, what's going on?" The manager gave him the saddest excuse for a smile I've ever seen.
"Ah,
"Scumbag, you might not be dealing with me anymore going forward." "Why's that?" They'd known each other for years, so he didn't hold back. "Our young master was out inspecting family business, got ambushed by bandits on the road to Falling Sun Town, and injured his ankle in the fight. You heard the doctor, tendon severed, he'll be permanently disabled. Old master only has this one grandson. If he finds out his precious heir got crippled on my watch, my career here is done." I already knew from my past life that Fu Hongxin walked with a limp, just never knew the exact cause. Turns out, ankle tendon, severed clean. Mentally, I dove into my space's storage to search for something appropriate. Truthfully, there's no real medicine that fixes a severed tendon. My actual plan was spring water, obviously, but I couldn't exactly whip that out in front of everyone. So I needed a cover, some plausible-looking powder to mix the spring water into. After some digging, I pulled a packet labeled swelling and bruise reduction powder. Spring water is powerful enough to heal basically anything short of a birth defect or actual death. Internal, external, doesn't matter. A tendon injury like Fu Hongxin's? A few applications, and it'd heal completely. Someone born missing something entirely, though, like a certain someone I know, spring water wouldn't help no matter how much you used. Using my space's transfer trick, I swapped the powder into a plain oil paper wrapper and slipped it out discreetly from my pocket. Manager, when I was a kid, a traveling doctor gave me a few packets of medicine specifically for broken bones and severed tendons. Want to try it on your young master? The manager wasn't exactly thrilled by this offer. He clearly doubted it. The doctor who just left was the best bone specialist in town, and even he was stumped. What could a random powder packet possibly do? My husband, catching the manager's skepticism, jumped in. Since you're out of better options, might as well try my wife's medicine. Beats doing nothing. That logic landed. How much does this medicine cost, Mrs. He? Let's worry about payment later. First, let's see if it even works. I couldn't say it was free, obviously. That'd make it look worthless. But I also couldn't quote an actual price. Everything from my space is genuinely priceless. Better to help first and negotiate after. In that case, please hand over the medicine, the manager said. I held it back. Actually, my husband knows exactly how to apply it properly. Better if he treats your young master directly himself. The manager didn't argue, just went to check with the young master, and came back quickly. Scumbag, Mrs. He, our young master would like to see you both. We followed him to the back courtyard, where Fu Hongxin lay stiff on a bed, face twisted in pain. Young master, Scumbag and his wife are here, the manager announced. Fu Hongxin turned toward the door. I'd be grateful for your help treating this. He wasn't in a position to be picky. The doctor had already delivered the verdict, and honestly, he wasn't expecting much from this random medicine idea. Just desperate enough to try anything. My husband said nothing, just lifted the blanket to examine the ankle. It was swollen like a steamed bun, an ugly wound surrounded by deep bruising. He pressed gently on the injury. Fu Hongxin broke into a cold sweat from the pain, but stayed completely silent, gritting through it. My husband knew the plan. Mix spring water into the powder, then apply directly. Manager, I'll need some clean water to mix this. Right away, the manager said, fetching it immediately. My husband pretended to dip his hand in the water, using his body to block the manager and Fu Hongxin's view while I secretly added spring water to the powder mixture. This time, I didn't hold back. His injury was severe, and going light on the spring water wouldn't do much. I added a solid 10+ drops before my husband applied the paste to the wound. Hiss! Fu Hongxin winced hard, face contorting. But almost immediately, the pain started fading, replaced by a cool, soothing sensation where the medicine touched. What I asked this medicine? It's incredible, he asked. I stuck to my cover story, a childhood gift from a traveling doctor, specifically for broken bones and severed tendons. Do you have any more of it? He pressed. The pain had nearly vanished entirely, proof enough the stuff actually worked. He knew full well a severed tendon can't truly reconnect, but if this medicine could spare him a lifetime of agony, that alone made it worth its weight in gold.
2 more packets, I said.
Given how much spring water went into this dose, 1 or 2 more applications should fully finish the job. Fu Hongxin was now looking at both of us with genuine new respect. Would you consider selling me this medicine? My husband and I exchanged a glance, both staying quiet. He wasn't sure what my angle was, so he let me lead. Privately, I was weighing which was worth more to Fu Hongxin, the medicine or our manuscript. Based on past life experience, I already knew the answer. The manuscript. Last time around, Xian had negotiated the sale of our White Snake story to Fu Hongxin directly, 1,000 taels, full rights bought outright, contract signed forbidding resale elsewhere under penalty of 5 times repayment if broken. Last lifetime, the story sold like crazy and the Fu family made an absolute fortune off it. Both Xian and I, in hindsight, felt like we got royally ripped off on that deal. This time, armed with hindsight, I wasn't about to hand over rights for a measly 1,000 taels again, especially since this version has actual illustrations from my husband, which bumps the quality way up. Best move for maximizing profit would normally be a royalty split arrangement with Fu Hongxin. But I ruled that out fast. The Fu family's bookshops span the entire country. There's no way I could audit their sales numbers myself, and they could easily cook the books and lowball me on a cut. Better to just name a Big upfront price, and skip the future headaches entirely. So instead of mentioning the medicine's price at all, I just smiled and said, "Focus on healing first, young master. The medicine's already in my hands. You can have more whenever you need it." To Fu Hongxin's ears, that read as "not for sale" made sense to him too. Medicine this good was probably priceless, and if he bought it outright, he'd have none left for future emergencies. "My apologies for overstepping," he said. The manager, standing off to the side, watched all this with visible shock. Judging by how eagerly Fu Hongxin had asked to buy it, the medicine must genuinely be working wonders. Was Mrs. He's little powder packet actually something special? Not knowing that we had zero intention of selling, and seeing we hadn't left yet, the manager assumed we were just waiting for payment on prior book copying work. "Scumbag, how many finished manuscripts did you bring this time?" My husband, actually looking for an opening to bring up our story, jumped on it. "Manager, we're actually here to sell a story manuscript." That caught him off guard. Then he remembered we'd mentioned working on an original piece before. "You finished writing it?" My husband pulled out our completed White Snake manuscript and handed it over. With Fu Hongxin present, the manager wasn't about to critique it himself. Protocol was always to pass new submissions up to the actual owner for approval anyway. But given the young master's condition, he wasn't sure if now was the right time, so he glanced over questioningly. "Bring it here," Fu Hongxin said. His pain had eased significantly by now. Given that the author was technically his benefactor, he intended to buy it regardless of quality. Purely out of gratitude, figured he owed us that much anyway. He opened the first page, not expecting much, and immediately perked up. The very first page wasn't text at all, but a gorgeously detailed illustration. 2 stunning women sheltering from rain under willow trees by a lake. He looked up. "Did you draw this yourself?" My husband nodded modestly. "Just added some visual flair to the story." "Remarkable. I haven't even read a word yet, and I'm already hooked by the artwork." He kept flipping, finding a new illustration every few pages, each one vivid and alive. Landscapes, characters, all rendered beautifully enough to feel like you were standing right in the scene. Beyond the art, the story itself pulled him in completely, genuinely fresh, nothing like anything he'd read before. We sat patiently while he finished the whole thing. When he finally set it down and looked at my husband again, his whole demeanor had shifted. Even his tone of address changed to something far more respectful. "Brother, is there a second half to this story?" He'd just reached the part where the White Snake risks everything to steal a magical herb to save her love, and then nothing. Story cut off. "The second half isn't finished yet," my husband said honestly. "This is all that exists so far. What a shame. First story that's ever gripped me this completely, and I don't even get an ending." He'd seemingly forgotten his own injury entirely, fully absorbed in the plot. My husband understood that feeling well. He'd had the exact same reaction reading the complete version in my space. Truth was, we could finish and transcribe the second half anytime we wanted, but per my strategy, we were deliberately holding it back to build anticipation before releasing it separately. Rather than address the sequel question, my husband got straight to business. "Would you be interested in acquiring this manuscript, young master?" "Absolutely, without question," Fu Hongxin said instantly. "Name your price." Business is business. He wanted to hear a number first before committing. "This time," I answered. I held up one finger. "Young master, full publishing rights, one-time payment, 10,000 taels of silver." Dead silence in the room. Even my own husband looked stunned by my number. Having spent years in the manuscript copying business himself, he had a rough sense of market rates. The manager had once mentioned even the best-selling story ever only paid its author 1,000 taels. Our story was good, sure, but I just quoted 10 times that. And it wasn't just him. Even within Fu family's massive publishing network, nobody had ever paid 10,000 taels up front for a single manuscript. Ever. I could see everyone in the room was shell-shocked by my number, so I pressed my advantage. "Young master, I'll say with full confidence, nothing currently on the market compares to what my husband has written." And he deliberately withheld the second half specifically to hook readers and build anticipation, guaranteed to drive demand even higher. "I promise you, once this releases, it will sell." My suggestion, Commission a dedicated printing team and publish it properly, no half measures. I said all that with total confidence. I'd literally watched White Snake become a sensation in my past life, so I knew exactly what I was selling. Fu Hongxin, hearing me lay it out so smoothly, genuinely couldn't find a counter-argument. Honestly, he looked almost hypnotized, like he was already picturing the thing flying off shelves. And on top of that, his ankle pain had basically vanished by this point. Between the two, he made his decision on the spot.
Deal.
10,000 taels for full publishing rights. My husband literally dug at his own ear to make sure he'd heard right. These two just agreed. No haggling, no back and forth, nothing. Straight from ask to yes. He looked at me with something close to actual awe after that. Good thing he hadn't jumped in with his own opinion earlier. We'd never have landed a price this insane otherwise. Both sides worked out the details fast. Fu family gets exclusive rights. We can't sell to anyone else ever, no exceptions. My husband had 1 month to deliver the second half. Break that deadline, and we'd owe 10 times the payment as penalty. All fair terms, so he signed without hesitation. Fu Hongxin didn't drag his feet either, handed over 10,000 taels in silver notes on the spot. My husband held that stack of paper like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Our family's never exactly starved, but we've also never had anything close to real wealth. This was all thanks to me, honestly, and I could tell he felt the pressure of that, like he needed to step his own game up to keep pace with me. Fu Hongxin had someone file the contract properly, then picked the manuscript back up, pointing at the pen name on the cover. Henshui, is that your pen name, Brother Fu, or he? That name was actually my idea. The real-world original author of White Snake, in my past life, was named Zhang Henshui. I borrowed the Henshui part and dropped the surname. Since obviously I couldn't use my own name on a story, I basically remembered rather than invented. My husband nodded. Yes, that's the pen name. He didn't clarify it was technically his name being used, not mine. Why not use your real name, mister? Fu Hongxin asked, genuinely curious. Fu family publications usually credited authors by their real names. A hit story meant instant fame for the writer. My husband choosing anonymity was unusual. You'd rather people not know you wrote this, Fu Hongxin guessed.
Correct.
I'd appreciate it if you could keep this confidential, young master. My husband genuinely didn't want his name attached publicly. Fu Hongxin turned to the manager. You heard him. Keep this quiet. Only the two of them now knew the real author's identity, and as long as neither talked, nobody else ever would. Understood, young master. I'll guard this secret completely, the manager promised. With business settled, I left behind a couple more packets of the spring water-infused powder, and we said our goodbyes. Once outside, we headed straight for the local exchange house, also a Fu family enterprise. The silver notes Fu Hongxin gave us were in 500 tael denominations, and I wanted to convert 1,000 taels into physical silver to stash in my space for easy, everyday use. Fu businesses always operate with integrity. No snobbery over our plain cotton clothes. They treated us properly regardless of appearance. Per my request, the clerk gave us 200 taels in loose small silver, and the rest in 10 tael ingots. Once we left, I discreetly moved the silver straight into my space for safekeeping. Then came the shopping spree. With real money finally in hand, I wasn't holding back. Bought 200 pounds of white rice, 200 pounds of white flour, and knowing Aunt Sue's daily tofu operation eats through soybeans fast, 500 pounds of those specifically. Threw in some coarser rice and dark flour too, plus 100 pounds of meat. My space keeps things fresh indefinitely, so no more town trips just for meat. And a generous stock of seasonings, sugar, and salt. The more, the better. Given the sheer volume, my husband arranged for the shop staff to deliver it all to a quiet alley we'd scoped out beforehand, where I discreetly slipped everything into my space, once no one was looking. We'd spent so much time at the bookshop that we missed the ox cart back to the village, and had to walk home instead. Along the way, my husband held my hand as usual, chatting as we went. Wife, now that we've got real money, should we build a bigger house? Our current place is just 3 small mud brick rooms, functional, but nowhere near as sturdy as proper brick construction. I had past life memories tugging at me here too. The winter I married Xian, most of Jiayang County got hit by a brutal blizzard. Our village didn't lose many lives, but most homes collapsed under the snow load. I wasn't actually in the village that winter, off studying with Xian in the county seat, so I honestly don't know exactly how my husband's family fared back then. But I do know the Li house came down. There's also big sister-in-law Yaya to think about. She can't stay squeezed into her mother's room indefinitely with a newborn. And grandma living alone. That worries me too. Even buying the old Chin family compound wouldn't hold up against a real blizzard. If we build something solid and spacious enough now, Grandma would have somewhere safe to shelter when disaster hits. Bottom line, the second I had real money, building a proper house was my very first thought. Even without the disaster prevention angle, a good sturdy home is just nice to live in. I also needed to find the right moment to convince my husband we should start stockpiling food reserves too, though that conversation could wait. My husband, having no memory of any future blizzard, was just thinking with a normal person's logic, money in hand, upgrade the house. Totally reasonable. If you think it's a good idea, let's build. Only problem is our current plot's too small to expand. We need to ask the village head if there's a decent new building site available. I really wanted to build big this time, and our current space just wasn't going to cut it. Trouble is, all the good spots in the village were long since claimed. Anything left over would be near the mountain base or right next to farmland, neither of which he or I found especially appealing. Seeing my husband agree to the house idea, I couldn't help smiling, dimples and all. Great, let's go ask the village head tomorrow about land. Mid-conversation, my husband suddenly stopped walking, gripping my hand tighter and spun around fast. Nothing behind us but empty dirt road. Seeing him tense up worried me. What's wrong? He frowned. I keep feeling like someone's following us. My stomach dropped. Did someone see us at the exchange house? We just walked out with 10,000 taels, and outside the manager and Fu Hongxin himself, nobody else should even know. He scanned around for a while but found nothing, so, not wanting to scare me further, he shrugged it off. Must just be my imagination. Let's keep going. Little did we know, 2 of the prince's hidden agents had actually been tailing us, ducking up into tree cover with some fancy lightness skill just in time to avoid detection. Barely escaped getting caught. After that close call, they backed way off and tracked from a safer distance, careful enough that we noticed nothing else the rest of the walk home. Having confirmed our address, the 2 agents settled in nearby to keep watching from the shadows. As it happened, my husband was helping Aunt Sue haul out a basin of tofu right as villagers started lining up to buy. One of the agents, watching curiously, pointed it out to his partner. Look, they run a little food business. Neither of them had ever seen tofu before, assumed it was some kind of food, and figured, since their prince loves good food, why not grab some to bring back for him? Disguised as regular villagers, one of them got in line and bought 5 pounds, a big order by our standards. Aunt Sue, noticing an unfamiliar face, she knows literally everyone who normally buys from her, asked politely where he was from. He smoothly claimed to be from a neighboring village, having heard about the tofu, and wanting to try it. Aunt Sue bought it completely, delighted, figured word was spreading to other villages now, meaning even better business ahead. Right as that agent left with his tofu, Aunt Sue turned to the next person in line. Except this wasn't a customer. It was Lu Fei, my sister-in-law Yaya's husband. Slightly chubby, dark-skinned, thick brows, and overall harmless-looking guy. He bowed respectfully to Aunt Sue. Mom, I've come to take Yaya home. Aunt Sue, usually soft-spoken, grabbed the empty wooden basin next to her and hurled it straight at him. You have the nerve to show your face here? Our Yaya nearly died in your household. The basin connected with a solid thud. Lu Fei didn't dodge, didn't even flinch or cry out, just stood there frozen. The commotion brought my husband and me running out, and Yaya too, ignoring Xiuxiu's attempts to stop her, cradling her baby, stumbling out in tears the second she saw her husband. Do you have any idea how close you came to losing me and Nuno? Lu Fei looked genuinely baffled. He'd come home from work planning a nice evening with his wife, only to find his own mother and sister both laid up injured in bed, his sister with bruises and missing teeth, his mother with multiple. broken ribs, unable to move. His mother had told him her side. She'd merely scolded Ye a little, and my brother, visiting at the wrong moment, beat both of them senseless and took his wife and daughter away. Lu Fei had definitely witnessed his mother snapping at Ye plenty before, normal mother-in-law stuff in his eyes, nothing serious. So in his mind, my brother was the real villain here, assaulting 2 women and kidnapping his family. He'd shown up planning to bring Ye home and demand an apology on his mother's and sister's behalf. Except now both his mother-in-law and his own wife were telling him the exact opposite story, that Ye nearly died under his roof. What was actually going on here? Seeing him stand there dumbfounded, Xiao stepped in furiously. Lu Fei, don't tell me you genuinely don't know. My brother and sister-in-law personally witnessed your mother hitting my sister that day. She's still recovering from childbirth, shouldn't even be doing chores, and your evil hag of a mother wasn't even feeding her properly. If they hadn't shown up when they did, your wife and daughter might not even be alive right now. What? My mother made Ye do chores, hit her, and starved her. Lu Fei looked utterly stunned, clearly refusing to believe it. Watching his disbelief, my husband's temper snapped. He grabbed Lu Fei by the collar and threw him flat onto the dirt road outside our gate. If you genuinely know nothing, go home and ask your mother yourself. Ask the neighbors too. Come back once you've actually learned the truth. Lu Fei had zero chance to fight back, just crumpled under the force. Ye gasped, terrified my husband would go further, and rushed to shield him with the baby in her arms despite Xiao trying to hold her back. Scumbag, your brother-in-law doesn't know anything. Let's talk this out calmly. Watching her do that, I understood everything instantly. This woman is exactly the type described by that old saying, mud too soft to ever stick to a wall. Hopeless. Not wanting my husband to keep dealing with his sister's mess, I walked over, gently shook my head at him, and pulled him back into our yard. His initial fury at Lu Fei had already curdled into something else, plain disappointment in his own sister. We were thinking the exact same thing. Big sister Ye is just a lost cause. Whatever suffering she keeps enduring, at this point, she's choosing it herself. My husband had done everything he could. Whatever Ye chose after this was on her. Xiao, furious, stomped her foot. Big sis, have you already forgotten what the Lu family did to you? Our brother stood up for you, and you're just going to. She couldn't even finish. Too frustrated. Aunt Sue genuinely wanted Ye and Lu Fei to reconcile eventually, but not without this getting properly resolved first. If Ye just quietly went home with him now, unresolved, her life there would stay just as miserable. With half the village gathered outside gawking, Aunt Sue didn't want a public spectacle. You too, take this inside. Ye, baby in one arm, helped Lu Fei up with the other. Husband, let's do as Mom says, go talk inside. Lu Fei's head was still spinning from Xiao's accusations, torn between believing his own mother or believing her. Ye tugged him inside. Aunt Sue, face stone cold, laid it out plainly. Lu Fei, everything Xiao said is true. If Scumbag hadn't shown up when he did, your daughter would have starved to death, and Ye's life was hanging by a thread too. She wasn't exaggerating. When the baby first arrived here, she genuinely worried the poor thing wouldn't survive. She was so thin and too weak to even properly cry. Lu Fei looked lost, refusing to accept it. Sure, his mom's got a temper, likes to smack people around sometimes, but starving and nearly killing a postpartum daughter-in-law? Surely not that far. Seeing his doubt, Aunt Sue, tearing up, rolled up Ye's sleeve to show the still visible bruising. Look at this yourself. This is what your mother did. She came home covered in bruises like this. Both my husband and I noticed Lu Fei's eyes dart away the second he saw the marks. Clear as day. He wasn't clueless. He just didn't want to face reality. Meanwhile, poor Ye sat there tearfully looking at him like he'd swoop in and fix everything, completely blind to how far gone he actually was. He kept his eyes down, refusing to meet her pleading gaze, refusing to accept his own mother could be this cruel. Mother-in-law, let Ye come home with me. I'll talk to my mom, tell her to stop mistreating her. Aunt Sue almost laughed in his face. You, of all people, know your mother's temper better than anyone. You really think she'll just stop because you asked nicely? Lu Fei floundered. Then what do you suggest? She's married into my family. She's supposed to live her whole life with me. She can't just stay at her mother's house forever, can she? Honestly, Aunt Sue didn't have a clean answer either. As a mother, of course, she wanted her daughter happy in her marriage, but if a lifetime of abuse was the alternative, she'd rather see her daughter divorced. Divorce was the last resort, not the plan, but it was on the table if it came to that. She'd wanted to wait until Ye calmed down enough to ask what she actually wanted, but Lu Fei showed up faster than expected. Without knowing Ye's own wishes, Aunt Sue wasn't going to make this call for her. She turned to her sniffling daughter.
Yeah.
What do you actually think? Ye through tears. Mom, I just want to have a good life with my husband. Aunt Sue. My husband.
Me.
Even unmarried Xiao let out an exasperated sigh. Aunt Sue glared at her daughter, frustrated beyond words. Nobody's stopping you two from having a good life. But have you thought about what happens when you go back and your mother-in-law starts right back up on you? Just the mention of her mother-in-law made Ye's whole body flinch. Mrs. Feng really was that terrible, pointing a broom at her to bark orders even while pregnant, and it only got worse after the baby came. Lu Fei works in a neighboring town, only comes home a couple days a month. Nobody there to protect her the rest of the time. Husband. Can we move out? It was the only solution Ye could think of. If she wasn't living under the same roof as Mrs. Feng, nobody could mistreat her. Lu Fei rejected it instantly. I'm my parents' only son. We can't just split the household. People would laugh at us. Then what am I supposed to do? If I go back, she'll just keep hurting me. I'm scared, I really am. Ye broke down crying again. Torn between not wanting to leave him and being terrified of her mother-in-law, with moving out off the table entirely, she felt completely cornered. Aunt Sue actually liked Ye's idea, though. Rent a small place in the town where Lu Fei works, well away from that horrible woman. I think Ye's plan is solid. Rent a courtyard in the town where you work. She's your wife. Why would anyone laugh at her joining you there? That's... Lu Fei trailed off, clearly not wanting to commit to moving out. Full stop. No real justification beyond just not wanting to. Seeing him stall, Aunt Sue ran out of patience. I'll give you time to think it over. In the meantime, Ye stays here. She stood up, signaling the conversation was over. Lu Fei glanced at Ye, hoping she'd take a side and just leave with him today anyway. After a long internal struggle, Ye finally said, I'll listen to Mom. Go home and think it over. She wanted things to work with him, but picturing Mrs. Feng's face again, she couldn't bring herself to just walk back into that house. Seeing her hold firm, Lu Fei knew he wasn't taking her home today. He stood, sighed.
Fine.
I'll think about it. And left. The second he was gone, Ye burst into tears again in front of everyone. This time, neither Xiao nor I bothered comforting her. Between us, we both silently agreed. She's just too weak-willed. If her family hadn't been here today, she'd have gone straight back with him, no question. No amount of family backing her up matters if she won't stand up for herself. Xiao, disappointed, pulled me away. My husband, equally resigned, turned to leave too. Left alone with her, Aunt Sue swallowed her frustration and tried once more. Yeah, don't you think Lu Fei knows everything already, and he's just pretending not to? Mom, why would you say that about him too? Ye had never once doubted him. Aunt Sue jabbed a finger against her daughter's forehead. You're married. You have visible bruises. You think he just didn't notice? I don't know why he's playing dumb, but this time, you're not going back with him easily. Unless he agrees to move out with you, you stay right here in your mother's house. Nowhere else. This was the first time Aunt Sue had ever spoken to Ye this firmly. Truth is, her eldest daughter's spinelessness had gone uncorrected too long. If it didn't change, she'd keep getting steamrolled forever. Aunt Sue blamed herself a little too, for trusting the matchmaker's word that Lu Fei seemed honest and reliable. Turns out his mother is a monster, and he's apparently fine pretending not to notice. She sighed and stood up. Just think about everything I said. Then she left. My husband and I had originally planned to slip into the space that evening and dig through the library for house-building references, but Lu Fei's visit had drained all the enthusiasm right out of us. My husband kept sighing intermittently, clearly still stewing over his sister's situation. Husband, everyone's life is their own to live. We can't make this decision for her. Whatever she chooses, all we can do is keep looking out for her going forward. I didn't want to weigh in on Yia's marriage, and I didn't want him getting too tangled up in it either. He nodded. You're right. This is hers to decide. Meanwhile, across town, the two agents had reported back to their prince at the inn. One knelt. Your Highness, we tracked your benefactors. Their home is in a nearby village called Wheaton Grain Village. Prince Jun Howard nodded. Once the rest of our men arrive, I'll pay them a personal visit. His companion Lin Yuchen had already been escorted back to the capital the day before. The prince stayed behind for two reasons: to properly thank his benefactors and, more urgently, to keep searching for a rare herb called soul-gathering grass, rumored to grow on Ox Head Mountain nearby. He wasn't leaving town without it. One agent presented a small package of tofu he'd bought. Your Highness, this is called tofu, sold by your benefactor's mother. Looked interesting, so I picked some up for you to try. The prince eyed the soft white blocks. Never seen anything like this before. The villagers in line said it's especially good braised. Have the kitchen prepare it braised for me. The prince said, figured he ought to support his benefactor's family business regardless of how it tasted. Soon the dish arrived, braised tofu with white rice. The other agent pulled out a silver needle, ready for the routine poison testing the prince always did before eating. The prince waved it off. No need this time. He elegantly picked up a glistening cube with his chopsticks and took a careful bite. Silky texture, a subtle savory bean aroma filling his mouth. He ate several more pieces. Genuinely delicious. Both agents stood there watching him eat, practically drooling themselves. Is there more of this? The prince asked. I bought 5 pounds total, Your Highness. Plenty left. No need to stand guard here anymore. Have the kitchen prepare the rest and let everyone have a taste. Several more hidden bodyguards were stationed outside, unseen. Everyone meant them too. As you command, the agent replied, practically enthusiastic at the prospect of also getting some tofu. Back at our place after dinner, I called out to Aunt Sue. Mom, my husband and I need to discuss something with you. We'd planned this in advance. Couldn't keep our newfound wealth secret from her if we wanted to build a house. She followed us to our room. What did you two want to talk about? Using my sleeve as cover, I pulled the remaining 9,000 taels in silver notes from my space and handed them straight to her. Since our household hadn't formally split assets, and we were about to reveal this fortune anyway, I felt the money should technically go to her as head of the house's finances, though knowing her, I fully expected her to refuse. This was mostly a gesture of respect for the family hierarchy. Mom, this is what my husband and I earned today. She looked down at the notes, clearly startled, but not in the panicked, overwhelmed way a typical farm wife might react to seeing this much money. Just from the weight and feel of the stack, she could roughly gauge the amount without even counting. Clearly a sharper woman than she let on.
Yunvan, Xiangbai.
How do you two have this much money? My husband explained. We wrote a story together and sold it today to the owner of Sunrise Bookshop. What kind of story is worth this much? Aunt Sue, having done manuscript copying herself for extra income, knew the industry reasonably well. The story's original, Mom, and my husband illustrated it himself. We happened to catch the shop owner's son in person today, negotiated, and the story sold for 10,000 taels. I didn't over-explain, believe it or not. That really was the price. Aunt Sue pushed the notes back into my hands. This is money you two earned. Keep it yourselves. My tofu business brings in plenty every day as it is. Exactly as expected, she wasn't taking it. I didn't argue, just took it back. Then I pulled out an additional 100 taels from my space and handed that over separately. Mom, this is for repaying Grandpa, Grandma, and the 2 uncles for the land. Money, this time she didn't refuse outright, though she noted, we don't actually owe that much to the old house. She counted out 4 10-tael ingots, 40 taels total. This covers what we owe, with some left over. You keep the rest, Yunwan. She didn't say it outright, but the message was clear. She was formally handing me control of the household finances. Since she was insisting, I didn't push back further. In that case, I'll hold on to it. Just let me know whenever you need anything. Good, she said, carefully locking the silver away in the cabinet, planning to return the debt to the old house the next day. Thinking the conversation was wrapping up, she started to get up, but my husband stopped her. Mom, now that we've got this money, Yunwan and I were thinking about building a bigger house. She waved a hand. It's your own money. Build whatever you want, no objection from me. Have you picked a location yet? We want somewhere bigger, Mom. Our current plot's too small. We're planning to scout the village tomorrow for any open land, then talk to the village head about buying it. Aunt Sue pointed toward the direction opposite the Lee house. Your Auntie Zhou next door mentioned wanting to sell her place and move into town to live with her son. If we bought her courtyard and combined it with ours, that'd be plenty of space. Both our eyes lit up at that. We already knew the Zhou family's plot, several times the size of ours, more than enough combined to build something proper. And Grandma's newly purchased compound sits right there too. If she agreed, we could fold that in as well and build her a fresh, new home alongside ours. Much easier to keep an eye on her that way. Mom, ask Auntie Zhou tomorrow how much she wants for her place. If it's reasonable, let's buy it, my husband said, grinning. He liked this location, close to the mountain for hunting trips. Aunt Sue agreed and went to bed. Once she left, my husband and I slipped into the space. I'd been curious about her for a while, so I finally asked, Husband, Mom carries herself so differently from the other village women. She can't be from an ordinary farming background, right? Turns out he'd wondered the same thing himself. Her elegant manner, her beautiful handwriting, none of that fits a typical peasant girl's upbringing. I asked her once. All she said was her family was comfortably well off before she married Dad. Then something happened, and they fell on hard times. She wouldn't give details, and I could tell she really didn't want to talk about it, so I dropped it. That tracks, I said. Whatever her background, we'll just keep treating her well. Genuinely, a mother-in-law this cultured and kind is basically impossible to find anywhere nearby. I got lucky landing here. 5 days passed in the space, one night outside, both of us feeling noticeably stronger from training. After breakfast, my husband grabbed his bow, ready to finally head up the mountain. Last time I'd stalled him with a tofu excuse, but this time I couldn't think of a good reason to stop him. Since avoiding the mountain trip entirely wasn't going to work, I decided to just go with him instead. If anything dangerous happened, I could yank us both into the space to safety. He initially resisted the idea of me tagging along, worried I'd get scratched up by branches or worse. But I dug in hard enough that he eventually gave in and let me come. Right as we left the yard, we passed Shuang Shuang, arms full of dirty laundry, headed to the river, looking sour as usual. The second she spotted the bow on my husband's back, though, her whole mood flipped, from gloomy to gleeful. This time, oddly, she didn't bother insulting me at all, just stared at us with this creepy, satisfied look, like she was watching dead people walk. In her head, finally, Scumbag's heading up the mountain, and bringing his useless wife along as extra bait, even better. Hope that worthless girl never comes back. In her past life, this was roughly the time frame, 7 or 8 days after their wedding, when Scumbag got seriously hurt in that same mountain. The timing lined up exactly. My husband didn't even bother glancing at her, just took my hand, and we headed straight for Ox Head Mountain. About half an hour in, he pointed at a marked spot. I set a trap here. Let's check for game. At the trap, the dried grass and branches covering it hadn't been disturbed. No animal had come by recently. Asked if he'd baited it. He confirmed, a bit of dried flatbread inside. I grabbed a piece of that bread and quietly added a few drops of spring water. Try putting this in instead. He didn't argue, knew my spring water was basically magic, figured it'd draw something in. We reset the trap and kept climbing. An hour of walking, still nothing. Tired? He asked, concerned. Not at all. Between the daily martial arts training in the space, my stamina had improved a ton. This hike was nothing. He gestured ahead. Past this point, we might run into wild boars or bigger game. If we do, get into the space immediately. I didn't want to hide away. The whole reason I came was to prevent his past life injury from repeating. Spring water can save a life, sure, but I'd rather he never get hurt at all. I didn't argue outright though, just said, "Don't worry, I'll be careful." He kept us moving. Strangely quiet day. Normally by this point in a hunting trip, he'd have bagged something. Not even a wild chicken so far. Not wanting to go home empty-handed, he pushed us further in. Eventually, we spotted a wild rabbit. He drew his bow fast, fired, and it dropped instantly. He walked over out of habit, reaching for vines to tie its legs for carrying. Before he could, though, the rabbit just vanished on the spot. Put the game straight into the space. We'll grab it later, I reminded him. Right, he'd genuinely forgotten my space could store things. Less than an hour further in, he suddenly tensed up, gripping my hand tight. Then we both heard it, the sound of animals violently tearing into each other nearby. I gripped his hand back, ready to pull us both into the space if needed. He assumed I was scared. Wife, hide in the space now, come out once it's safe. Having finally found game worth pursuing, he didn't want to just retreat. Plus, this was a good chance to test how much his training had actually paid off. I wasn't scared. I can vanish into the space anytime danger gets close. I was worried about him, terrified of his past life tragedy repeating. I shook my head firmly. I'm not scared. We didn't advance further, just held position under a thick tree trunk. His plan, if things got dangerous, get me into the space, then climb the tree himself and fire down at whatever it was. Holding our breath, we waited. The sounds of the fight slowly faded, not because the animals moved away, but because the fight itself was ending, nature's usual outcome. Strongest survives. He led us forward cautiously. Past a small hill, a modest hollow opened up ahead. The clearing was soaked in blood. 2 massive adult wild boars, easily 300 pounds each, lay dying on the ground. A third boar, also badly wounded, charged straight at the rock face of the hollow. I braced for it to smash itself to death against the wall. Instead, right at impact, it simply vanished into the stone. Turns out that rock wall wasn't a wall at all, a vine-covered cave entrance hidden in plain sight. From inside, another agonized squeal erupted, and the boar burst back out, chased by an absolutely massive python. The snake had blood on it too, though whose blood exactly was unclear. The boar circled desperately along the edge of the hollow, the python's thick coils surging after it, clearly enraged past reasoning. I glanced at my husband instinctively. In my past life, this was probably what nearly killed him. Pythons are dangerous enough on their own, but this one looked practically supernatural. Its thickest section, no human arms could even wrap around it. Weakened, the boar's speed dropped, and the python closed in fast, clamping its jaws around the boar's throat. The boar screamed in agony, thrashing uselessly. My husband seized the moment, firing 2 arrows simultaneously. One struck the python's thick body, the other blinded one of its eyes. Enraged by the pain, it released the boar, and it came surging straight toward us instead. He fired 2 more arrows. This time, the snake sensed the danger and dodged the one aimed at its vital spot near the head, though the second still struck its body. Now doubly wounded and furious, it spotted us clearly. As it bore down on us, I grabbed my husband's hand and yanked us both into the space, just in time. Even he, years of mountain hunting under his belt, had never seen a snake this size before. Fighting it head-on with any confidence just wasn't realistic. Inside the space, breathing hard, he watched through the floating window as the python reached where we'd been standing, searched around, then eventually turned back. Once it retreated, he said, "Wife, get me back out there." I saw the coast was clear and pulled us both back into the real world. This time, he fired just one precise shot, straight for the vital spot near its head. 1 arrow, dead center. The massive body thrashed briefly, then went completely still. Nearby, the boar was still writhing on the ground, desperately trying to crawl into the cave. My husband told me, "Hide in the space, I'll go check things out." "No. If you go, we go together." I refused flat out, remembering exactly why I'd insisted on coming along in the first place. Resigned, he led me carefully toward the hollow, dagger drawn and ready. The struggling boar noticed us fast, spun around, clawed the ground with its front hooves, and charged. My husband was quicker, 1 arrow straight through its eye. It shrieked in pain, charging even harder, blind rage taking over. I moved to pull us both into the space again, but he beat me to it. "Wife, I've got this one. Thinking about it, he was right. The whole village always talked admiringly about his hunting skills. A boar alone was well within what he could handle. So I stepped back, giving him room to work. The boar closed the distance fast. He leapt, dagger raised, and landed with the blade buried straight in its throat. I gasped, stunned. "Husband, you can do lightness skill now." That jump, impossibly light, like he'd merged with the wind itself. No hesitation, no drag. Exactly like the elite guards I remembered from my past life serving Xian's household. He looked equally surprised. Every time he'd practiced lightness technique in the space before, something always fell off. His body never quite achieved that weightless feeling. But in that split second of danger, something clicked. He focused his energy into his core, and suddenly he was airborne, effortless. He grinned wide at me. "Guess I really can do it now." You were clearly born for martial arts," I said, genuinely impressed. We'd trained together this whole time, and I hadn't leveled up nearly this fast, a little jealous, honestly. Still, despite the excitement, he stayed alert to other threats nearby. Taking my hand again, we walked toward the fallen python. Once confirmed dead, I waved my hand and swept it straight into the space. All 3 boars were similarly finished off with a few extra stabs to be sure, then stored away too. Both of us were curious what exactly the boar had been so desperate to reach inside that cave. Same idea struck us both at once. We headed toward the entrance together. Approaching, a sharp, metallic stench of blood hit us hard. We both tensed instantly. He tossed a small rock inside first, listening carefully. Just the sound of it hitting the ground. Nothing else. Satisfied, he led me in cautiously. Pitch black inside. He lit a fire starter for light. In the dim glow, animal bones littered the floor everywhere. Deeper in, I nearly gasped out loud. A complete human skeleton laid out at the very back of the cave. I grabbed his arm tight, instinctively. He pulled me straight into his chest. "Don't be scared. I'm right here," wrapped in his solid arms. The fear melted into safety almost instantly. Any lingering sense of modesty vanished completely. I wrapped my arms around his firm waist without a second thought. Feeling my soft body pressed against him, his heartbeat kicked into overdrive, a sudden wave of heat rushing through him entirely. Having lived a full lifetime before this one, I wasn't exactly naive about these things. I could feel clearly how rigid and warm his body had gone. Pressed together like that, I couldn't help but notice certain other changes happening too. By then, all my fear had completely evaporated, and my heart was racing for a whole different reason. My husband clearly loved this moment. Even a little flustered himself, he refused to let go, kept me pulled close as we walked deeper. His mind was wandering too. This was his formally married wife in his arms. Nothing wrong with a little closeness. Lately in the space, he'd caught himself just staring at me without realizing it. He was starting to suspect he'd genuinely fallen for me. Only question, did I feel the same? Maybe tonight, once we got home, he'd try testing the waters. Meanwhile, I was wondering, is this the thing people in my past life used to call heart flutter? Why else would being held like this make me this nervous? My pulse racing way faster than normal. And worse, I actually wanted more of this. Wanted to just stay wrapped up like that indefinitely. Both of us lost in our own private thoughts. We drifted further into the cave, without noticing. Right then, the fire starter finally burned out, plunging us back into darkness. I was about to pull a candle from the space when we both spotted faint light glowing ahead. Instantly alert again. "If we hit danger, get into the space," he reminded me. I nodded. Hand in hand, we pressed forward as the temperature spiked noticeably. About 100 meters later, we turned a corner, and the cave opened up completely. This was clearly the end of the tunnel, a massive natural chamber. Walls curving up like a giant barrel, steep and dizzying. Ahead of us, a huge pool of water stretched out further than we could see, steam curling gently off the surface. Given the heat, obviously a hot spring. Looking straight up, blue sky and drifting clouds peeked through the opening, sunlight streaming down in soft beams. Along one polished rock face, a thin stream of water, thick as an arm, trickled steadily down with a soft, rhythmic dripping sound. My husband, awestruck. What an incredible hidden world. I was already distracted by something else entirely, plants growing all along the rock walls. Look, that's iron-skin dendrobium. Everywhere, he'd never heard of it, but knew by reputation it was an extremely valuable medicinal herb. I pulled a reference book, Guide to Precious Medicinal Herbs, from my space and flipped to the matching illustration.
See?
Confirmed, this really is iron-skin dendrobium. He tested his still rough lightness skill, leaping up 2 body lengths onto the rock face and grabbing a few stalks. Comparing them against the book's illustration, he grinned wide. It really is. I pulled 2 iron claw hooks from the space, handing him one. Let's collect all of it and bring it home. All right, be careful, he said, already trusting my physical abilities even if my lightness skill lagged behind his. We split up, each claiming a side of the rock face, hooks giving us solid grip for the climb. I sent my harvest straight into the space. He had no storage on hand, so he just dropped his onto the ground to collect later. Between the two of us, we cleared more than half the wall's growth in no time. Riding the excitement, I kept climbing, using the claw hook. Rounding a blocking rock, what I saw next nearly made me shout out loud with joy. Husband, I found soul-gathering grass. He had no idea what that was, but seeing my reaction, figured it had to be something incredible. I explained without waiting for him to ask. According to my reference book, soul-gathering grass is an extraordinarily rare 1,000-year herb, growing only in remote, spiritually charged mountain valleys under extremely specific climate conditions. Deep, mysterious ink-green leaves, thin as silk threads with clearly visible veins, practically radiating life force. Its tiny flowers shine bright as stars against a night sky. When exposed to open air, it releases a subtle, calming fragrance said to soothe the mind. Because it grows so slowly and so rarely, it's considered a legendary treasure. Supposedly, not a single person in the entire country currently possesses one. That alone tells you how precious this actually is. While explaining, I carefully harvested the whole plant, root system intact. Given our current standing in life, if word ever got out we possessed something this valuable, it would bring nothing but trouble. Better to keep it safely stored in the space. Maybe even try planting it in my spirit fields to see if it could propagate. Seeing me this thrilled, my husband threw himself into the harvesting even harder. Within the hour, we'd stripped the entire wall of dendrobium. In my past life, I once saw a low-quality batch of this exact herb being sold at a capital pharmacy for 5 taels per pound. Given the pristine quality of everything we'd just collected, the value here had to be substantial. Looking at the pile now sitting in my space, easily 300 pounds, selling this properly to an apothecary would net us a genuinely serious sum. After one more scan of the area confirmed nothing else valuable remained, we headed back. With this haul in hand, even passing the skeleton on the way out felt far less unsettling than before. Once safely outside the cave, my husband, ever cautious, gathered vines to conceal the entrance again. The moment he turned around, 4 starving wolves came charging down the slope. The blood from the python and boars had drawn them in. Spotting easy prey, all 4 attacked at once. This time, I didn't retreat into the space. Instead, I pulled 2 gleaming broadswords straight out, handing one to my husband, genuinely curious to test how far my own training had actually come. We stood back to back, blades ready. He moved in front to shield me, impossibly fast, dropping one wolf with a single clean strike. The remaining 3, enraged by their fallen packmate, threw themselves entirely at him, completely ignoring me. I wasn't about to let my husband hog all the wolf-slaying glory. Quick as anything, I raised my own blade and drove it into another wolf's throat. Blood sprayed, staining my sleeve red, and meanwhile my husband had already dispatched the other 2, just as cleanly. Wife, store the wolves, let's move fast. From experience, he knew starving wolves usually travel in packs, for alone was unusual, meaning more were likely nearby. Even though he was confident the 2 of us could handle a whole pack now with our training, he still didn't want his delicate wife anywhere near this. Much carnage. His words, not mine. I just personally gutted a wolf. Thank you very much. I didn't argue. just waved the dead wolves straight into the space. He grabbed my hand out of habit, then noticed it was covered in blood and winced with obvious concern. We hurried out of the hollow to safety, where he found a clear stream and personally washed my hands clean, muttering the whole time, "From now on, leave the bloody stuff to me." Even before all this training, for wolves would have been nothing for me. If you go home covered in blood, Grandma's going to worry herself sick. Honestly, that was the most words I'd ever heard him string together in one go, and every single one dripping with concern for me. My heart went warm and fuzzy. Maybe this is what I never got in my past life. No smooth talk, no grand declarations, just a man whose every word quietly says, "I care about you." I don't need much more than that. A man who genuinely looks out for me for the rest of my life. That's plenty. Back down the mountain. No more game crossed our path directly, but our spring water-baited trap delivered big. 4 wild rabbits inside. His trap was designed with a spike in the center meant for large game. Small animals like rabbits could fall in and survive fine as long as they avoided the spike. All 4 had already devoured the spiked bread and were scrambling around at the bottom. He hopped in nimbly, tied them up with vines, then leapt back out using his newfound lightness skill. "So, what do you think of today's trap results?" I asked, genuinely curious whether the spring water bait had actually made a difference. He grinned. "On a good day, we'd normally get maybe 1 or 2 catches over a couple days. Bad luck, and it's half a month with nothing. Your spring water is basically irresistible to these critters. Then let's bait it heavier next time," I said, already planning to load up on spring water bread for future hauls. We were close to the base of the mountain by then. Since our real haul, the boars, the python, the wolves, all of it, was meant to be sold in town, it couldn't just stay hidden in the space forever. To avoid suspicion, I pulled everything back out into the physical world. My husband got to work fast, gathering branches and vines to build a makeshift raft, loading and lashing all the game onto it securely. I added a big bamboo basket of the dendrobium herb, tied down alongside everything else. This way, our official mountain haul would look completely legitimate. Even if people got jealous, at least nobody would suspect anything unusual. He hauled the raft down with one hand, carrying the 4 rabbits in the other, steady as ever. I walked behind, empty-handed and relaxed, not because I didn't offer to help, but because the man is stubbornly insistent on doing everything himself. At the base of the mountain, we ran into a group of women returning from foraging. Their eyes about popped out of their heads at the sight of that raft piled high with game. "Lord Almighty, look at everything Scumbag brought back. That's a boar and wolves, sure, but what's that huge thing that looks like a giant snake?" Scumbag just struck it rich, didn't he? "They're eating good tonight, that's for sure." The women couldn't look away, practically drooling at the pile. Only one person stayed dead silent, Shuang Shuang. Her eyes locked onto my husband's legs, dark with disbelief. This couldn't be right. He wasn't supposed to come back at all today, not until tomorrow when Aunt Sue would notice something wrong and send the village head and family up the mountain searching, only to find him carried back down, legs ruined for life. That's not what happened. He wasn't hurt at all, came back with a mountain of game to show for it. And me, the worthless girl, also perfectly fine. Her whole world seemed to short-circuit. What went wrong? Where was the deviation? This isn't possible. This isn't possible. He was supposed to be carried back, she muttered over and over, spiraling. A nearby woman, concerned, reached to feel her forehead. "Shuang Shuang, you okay?" She didn't respond, just kept muttering the same broken phrases, staring blankly at my husband. Someone else elbowed the concerned woman. "Leave her be, probably just jealousy driving her a bit crazy." That clicked for the first woman.
Ah.
Makes sense, honestly. That marriage was originally supposed to be hers before she swapped it with Yunwan. Anyone would feel some type of way about that. Shuang Shuang heard none of it. I still fixed dead on my husband. He noticed the unpleasant staring and glanced over, catching her gaze locked squarely on his legs. From his perspective, that kind of open staring just read as inappropriate. Getting stared down by a woman who'd literally hopped into her brother-in-law's bed made my husband's skin crawl. And thinking about how he was almost engaged to marry that exact same woman? A cold shiver ran through him retroactively. I'd caught the weirdness too, but I already knew the reason. I know Shuang's reincarnated, and she'd obviously been expecting my husband to come back crippled today. Seeing him totally fine, staring at his legs like that made total sense from her perspective. Knowing the reason didn't mean I was going to just let her ogle my husband, though. Shuang, aren't you embarrassed staring at another woman's husband like that, right out in public? The women near her immediately turned frosty toward her too. One of them couldn't resist. Oh, I nearly forgot. Didn't you crawl into your brother-in-law's bed a while back? I actually defended you at the time. Figured no way you'd be that restless, barely married. Guess I was wrong. Apparently you'll go after your own cousin's husband too. Shuang, snapping out of her daze, glared viciously. Don't spread lies about my reputation. The woman shot back, unbothered. What reputation is there left to ruin? You did that yourself. She didn't bother engaging further, just herded her friends away, not wanting to be seen standing too close to Shuang. Furious, Shuang spat venomously at the departing women before rounding on us. My husband, meanwhile, was busy comforting me. Wife, don't waste your temper on people who don't matter. Hearing his gentle tone toward me only fed Shuang's jealousy further. Why does SHE get this treatment? In her past life, married to him, he barely spoke 2 words to her, always stone-faced. And now here he was, all warmth and smiles toward me, the worthless girl. Worse, he looked genuinely handsome doing it. Meanwhile, her hard-won prize, Zian the future nobleman, sat locked in his room all day studying, never once giving her a kind look no matter how she tried to please him. Why was everything so different this time? Last lifetime, he doted on me. Even stepped in when Mrs. Zhao yelled at me. Why had everything flipped for her? No, she couldn't just sit here and accept this. Enough was enough. Time to tell Zian the truth about his real identity, push him to head to the capital and reclaim his noble birthright sooner rather than later. She swallowed her rage, spat venomously toward us one last time, grabbed her basket of foraged greens, and stormed back toward the Lee house. We had no idea what was running through her head, and honestly, wouldn't have cared either way. We kept hauling our game homeward, and from a distance spotted Grandma, Aunt Sue, and Xiao waiting anxiously outside. Xiao was fastest, running to meet us. Big brother, big sister-in-law, why'd you take so long? Grandma and Mom have been worried sick. Understandably, normally when my husband went deep into the mountain alone, he'd give the family a heads up if he expected to be late or stay overnight. Today, with me tagging along and no warning given, everyone assumed we couldn't have gone too far and would be back by afternoon. Sunset came and went with no sign of us, and Grandma had already come by several times, increasingly anxious, until everyone was just standing at the gate watching the mountain path. The passing women had mentioned seeing us returning loaded with game, which finally brought them out to meet us halfway. I grabbed Xiao's hand reassuringly. Don't worry, we're both totally fine, just wandered further than planned. Aunt Sue and Grandma reached us right after. Aunt Sue snatched the 4 rabbits from my husband's hands without a word, then froze completely at the sight of the raft.
Scumbag.
What is all this? She'd genuinely never seen a haul like it. Xiao spotted it too. Oh my god, big brother, did you raid an entire boar den? Clearly fixated on the 3 massive boars stacked up front. My husband kept it simple. We got lucky today. Let's get home first, I'll explain there. Right, let's go. Aunt Sue agreed, not wanting a crowd gathering to gawk further. Once home, Xiao excitedly held up the still squirming rabbits. Big brother, how'd you even catch these alive? They fell into the trap themselves, didn't hit the spike. Makes sense they'd survive, he said, downplaying it. The more she looked at the rabbits, the more attached she got. Big brother, can I ask you something? What is it? He asked, busy unloading the raft. Can we keep these instead of selling them? I want to raise them. Before he could answer, Aunt Sue cut in. Rabbits dig burrows. We'd never managed to actually keep them contained. Everyone knows rabbits breed like crazy. If keeping them were easy, half the village would already be doing it for profit. Xiao pouted, not ready to give up.
But
I really want to try. I stepped in on my sister-in-law's behalf. Mom, husband, if Xiuxiu really wants to, why not let her try? Honestly, I'd already been planning to keep these for myself. I'd noticed one had an unusually round belly. When my husband pulled them from the trap, clearly pregnant. And burrowing wasn't actually a problem. My space's storage has wire mesh. Building a proper reinforced hutch would solve that easily. My husband had initially agreed with his mom, figured the rabbits would inevitably escape eventually. But hearing me speak up, he trusted I already had a solution in mind. Mom, I brought back plenty today. A few rabbits worth of profit won't be missed. If Xiuxiu wants them, let her keep them. I'll build her a sturdy enough cage. Thrilled to have both her brother and sister-in-law on her side, Xiuxiu practically danced with joy.
Yes.
I'm going to go get them some water right now. Seeing us home safe, my grandmother said her goodbyes, ready to head back. But Aunt Sue stopped her. Auntie Sue, dinner's almost ready. Stay and eat before you go. Oh no, I couldn't. I'll just fix something simple at home. Grandma's never been the type to take advantage of hospitality, and since I married in, the He family's already done so much for her. She tries not to overstep. My husband chimed in too. Grandma, I'll cut up some fresh boar meat. Let's all eat together. Don't head back yet. Xiuxiu backed him up. Yeah, Grandma Sue, my brother rarely bags this much game. Stay for dinner. Faced with that much insistence, refusing further would have just seemed stubborn. All right, this old woman will shamelessly stay then. Once she decided to stay, Grandma wasn't one to sit idle, went straight to the kitchen to help Aunt Sue boil water for processing the boar. My husband asked Xiuxiu to run and fetch the whole extended family from the old compound to help butcher everything and, naturally, share in the feast. Word spread fast, and soon the whole crew showed up trailing behind Xiuxiu. They'd assumed, based on her description, maybe one boar at most. My husband occasionally called on them for help with a single kill before, mostly as an excuse to share meat around. Walking into our yard changed that assumption fast. Good lord, Scumbag, how much did you actually catch? Big Auntie gasped first, not quite trusting her own eyes. Cousin Xiangjin's wife, Lu Longji, had brought her 2-year-old along, and even the toddler pointed excitedly at the pile, shouting, So much meat. Yeah, so much meat, kid. Grandpa snapped everyone into action first. Stop gawking, get to work. Everyone pitched in immediately, no instructions needed, clearly seasoned at this kind of task. The cousins from both older uncles' households handled skinning the boars with practiced efficiency, while the uncles themselves expertly broke down the meat. My husband personally handled the massive python. Its skin, gallbladder, and bones are all valuable medicinal materials, worth collecting and selling to an apothecary separately. The stripped snake meat alone came out to roughly 200 pounds, giving a real sense of just how enormous that thing had actually been. Meanwhile, Xiuxiu and I worked on sorting the dendrobium herbs. Grandma He, unable to help with the heavier butchering work, kitchen duty was already covered by Aunt Sue and my own grandmother, joined us instead, mimicking our sorting technique carefully. Xiuxiu kept peppering me with questions. Big sis, are you sure this is actual medicine and not just weeds? I patiently explained. This is iron skin dendrobium. Good for the stomach, generates fluids, nourishes in, clears heat. Rare, which is why it's expensive. She stared at me wide-eyed. Big sis, you're incredible. You even recognize herbs. At this point, she'd basically turned into my #1 fangirl, practically starstruck. Grandma He sat beside us, quietly happy watching her grandson's wife handle all this so capably, clearly thinking their family's fortunes were only going up from here with someone this resourceful marrying in. Aunt Sue had the boar meat already sizzling away, more than enough to stuff everyone silly. Our whole yard buzzed with activity. Next door, meanwhile, the mood in Xian and Shuangshuang's room was decidedly less festive. Shuangshuang had come home fully intending to finally reveal Xian's true noble identity. Instead, walking into their room, she found him rummaging around near the bed. Nobody else would have known what he was searching for, but she knew exactly. She'd hidden the remaining coins from her earlier tofu heist inside her pillow, and he was clearly hunting for that missing handful of change. Without hesitation, she yanked him up by the collar. Li Xian, are you even a man? Can't earn money to support this family, And now you're digging through pillows for spare change. Already feeling guilty, his face flushed red then pale. Still, he tried defending himself. What do you mean I don't earn money? Can't you see I'm copying manuscripts? Copying manuscripts. Where's the money from that? Has a single coin of it gone toward this household? She'd meant to keep arguing, but her mind snagged on that word, manuscripts. Something clicked. In her past life, after being sold off as a concubine to that disgusting old man, she'd learned to read a little in her spare time. Not fluently, but enough to get the gist. She remembered exactly what Zian used to copy, story manuscripts. And speaking of story manuscripts, her mind jumped straight to White Snake, the story that swept the entire country in her previous life. Back then, desperate not to be looked down on by the other concubines in that old man's household, she'd spent 3 whole tales buying a copy just so she'd have something to discuss in conversation. She'd reread it so many times. The whole story was burned into her memory. Abandoning the argument entirely, she pivoted. Husband, I've got a story in my head. Want to hear it? Zian frowned, completely thrown. This woman had been ready to tear his head off 2 seconds ago, and now suddenly she's telling stories? Seeing him hesitate, she pressed on. I want you to write it up as a proper manuscript, based on what I tell you. It'll make far more money than copying other people's work ever will. Truth was, she'd originally come home planning to reveal his noble birthright to him. But given how he actually treats her, there was no guarantee he'd even believe her, and she still hadn't figured out a convincing enough reason why she'd know something like that. Definitely couldn't tell him. I'm reincarnated. He'd probably burn her at the stake as some kind of demon. Better to find a more practical way to make money first. Once they had enough silver, they could head to the capital. Word was Zian and the deceased young lord of the noble house were twins, and twins tend to look strikingly alike. If Zian started showing his face regularly near the Marquis's estate, someone was bound to recognize him eventually, speeding up his official recognition. Of course, all of this required money first. Without it, they couldn't even afford to leave tiny wheaten grain village, let alone travel to the capital. Zian had copied plenty of other people's stories over the years, and honestly, he tried writing his own more than once. Never worked out. So when Shuang offered up her mystery story, he figured, why not listen first? All right, tell me the story. She only remembered the broad strokes. Obviously, no way she could recite it word for word like the original book. So she told it in her own words, the general shape of it. Zian got more and more absorbed as she talked, and by the end, actually complimented her. That's genuinely a captivating story. First compliment she'd gotten from him in ages. Her long-starved vanity flared up instantly. Husband, why don't you write it up as a proper manuscript based on this? All right, I'll get started. No hesitation, he sat straight down at his desk. Meanwhile, in the Mainly family room, Mrs. Zhao's injuries had mostly healed by now, though she stayed in bed anyway, faking sickness to dodge farm work and avoid facing the village gossip. Li Hui sat smoking his pipe as usual, silent. Their youngest son Ziming stood in front of them both, practically begging. Dad, Mom, if I don't pay my tuition soon, the teacher won't let me attend class anymore. Mrs. Zhao looked pained. We genuinely have no money left. Mom, I'm eligible to sit the exam next March. You don't want all these years of studying to go to waste, do you? Ziming was nearly in tears. Their most promising son, unable to continue his education. That stung even Mrs. Zhao, but what could she actually do? Sell more land? They were already down to just 7 mu. Barely enough to feed the family, let alone fund tuition on top of it. She'd had days lying in bed to think this through, and figured Ziming's tuition crisis was as good an excuse as any to finally get the whole family together. Ziming, go get your 2 older brothers. As he turned to leave, she added, and bring Shuang too. Soon Zian, Shuang, and Zihuan all gathered in the main room. Mom, what's going on? Zihuan asked first. Mrs. Zhao scanned the room. Your little brother just came asking for tuition money. Everyone knows our situation. We don't have a single coin to spare. Keep going like this, and this whole family starves. Privately, everyone was thinking the same thing. Whose fault is that, exactly? But nobody dared say it out loud. Li Hui just kept smoking, silent as always. Mrs. Zhao continued. Ziming's tuition is off the table for now. We can't sell any more land. I think he needs to pause his studies until we've got money again. No other option really genuinely broke. Ziming nearly burst into tears. Mom, you can't do this to me. Don't you want to see me pass the scholar exam and bring honor to this family? That set Zian off. Little brother, in my opinion, you might as well quit studying entirely. This family's poured plenty of silver into your education over the years, and you still haven't even passed the entry-level exam, yet you're talking about becoming a full scholar. Big brother, what's that supposed to mean? You studied too, did you pass the scholar exam? Ziming, guilty, but still defiant.
Zian shot back.
No, I didn't pass the scholar exam, but I studied a full year less than you, and I already passed the entry exam. If Mom and Dad hadn't played favorites, funding your education over mine, I'd have brought honor to this family long ago. You have zero talent for studying to begin with. How dare you compare yourself to me? Just wait, next year I'll definitely pass the entry exam. Ziming genuinely believed this. His teacher had told him as much, that he was ready.
Zian scoffed.
So, what if you pass the entry exam? Look at your age already. Not exactly mockery. He'd passed his own entry exam at 13, and if their mother hadn't listened to some passing gossip about him, not being cut out for studying, he'd likely have made scholar level by now. Meanwhile, Ziming, 16, and still hasn't passed entry level, proof enough of how weak his actual aptitude was. Years of the family's farming income poured straight into his education, living hand-to-mouth the whole time, not even counting all the brushes, ink, and paper he burned through. Seeing the brothers about to come to blows, Mrs. Zhao yelled, "Everyone, stop arguing. Bottom line, we can't afford Ziming's tuition. On top of that, starting tomorrow, all three of you brothers head into town to find work and help support this family. Mom, I refuse. I want to keep studying," Ziming said stubbornly. He had zero idea how to actually earn money, and if his classmates ever saw him doing manual labor, he'd be mortified. Zihuan occasionally worked odd jobs already, handing every coin straight to the family to fund Ziming's education, never keeping a single copper for himself. Thinking about that now just made his resentment boil over. Mom, fine, I'll go work, but whatever I earn, I decide how it's spent. Excuse me? I'm not dead yet, and this family hasn't split assets. You're already scheming against your own mother? Ungrateful son. Mrs. Zhao's blood pressure spiked instantly. Zihuan wasn't intimidated by her anger at all. Mom, we're all your sons. Big brother got sent to study as a kid, and even after he stopped, he still never lifts a finger around here. Then little brother got sent to study too, and I'm the one who's done all the actual labor this whole time. Now you want me to go work and fund both of them. Does that seem fair to you? Mrs. Zhao didn't think his logic held up. Your brother's studying and succeeding benefits the whole family eventually. You'll share in that too. Humph. We'll talk about that once they actually succeed. Zihuan knew full well neither of his brothers had a scholar's talent in them. Studying was a rich man's game anyway. A farming family like theirs playing dress-up as gentry, pouring money into an education that clearly wasn't paying off after all these years, while his mother refused to admit it. At this rate, Zihuan figured he'd never even find a wife willing to marry into a household this dysfunctional. Watching mother and son escalate further, Li Hui finally knocked his pipe against the table, irritated. Enough. Everyone listens to your mother. All three of you go find work in town starting tomorrow. Half of whatever you earn goes to the household.